Alright, what's going on, everyone? We have a lot to cover today. A little bit more than I would like to, but you know, there's a lot of stuff that's been popping off. We had the main stuff I want to cover is like the the Queen of Canada shit, the Alberta essay controversy, uh, the Trump raid. If we have time, we might get to the what's it called? The Nancy Pelosi thing with China. Um, and then we also have just some other random stuff too. It's gonna be long for sure. There's so much to go over and whatnot, and like last time, like it was like that we covered stuff. It was a little bit while ago, but like updates provided. The the NDP had kind of like pissed me off with their response for their the Roger outages. They gave a very liberal response. So yeah, that's you should be advocating to nationalize it, my guy. On top of that, there's been like a couple other updates, and then like the Liz Cheney stuff. I don't really want to talk about that though. But we'll move on to some more fun stuff, I guess. So one thing that I found funny is Doug Ford swallowed a bee, and it's the funniest shit ever. So I guess we'll start off by watching that.
It's coming from the health sector. Holy Christ.
What was that?
I just swallowed a bee.
Oh my
Christ, I knew that little bugger.
You okay?
I'm good. He's down here buzzing around right now. He has a lot of real estate. Now, if that wasn't a clip, okay, this is gonna be.
Oh my god, what a fucking loser. Why is he saying that's a fucking clip, bro? Like, you're fucking attacking Mother Nature. Mother Nature is attacking back. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's funny. He swallows a bee. What a fucking loser. This is your premier, Alberta. He's eating all the fucking bees. Or not Alberta, fucking Ontario. This is your premier. He's eating your bees. No wonder why they're going extinct. My man, it's like he's chowed down on a couple bees. One too many, if I do say so myself. Yeah, let's move on to the Alberta essay controversy. It was
it's quite problematic.
So yeah, we'll move on to the Alberta essays. So, for context, for those of you who don't know, there was a contest where I think there was 5 submissions where they decided to pick out the top 3. Number 1 and 2 were like mostly like just capitalist propaganda. Like, who cares about that? We'll talk about that. The 2 that weren't picked actually provided solutions for the issues that Alberta was facing. And the number 3 pick was like right out of the Nazi playbook. Like it's right out of the Nazi playbook, and we'll get into that. So it's like it's the whole like white replacement theory bullshit and whatnot. In February, the Legislative Assembly of Alberta launched an essay contest from 17 to 25 year old women, inviting them to explore how they can contribute to a better society for the chance of up to $500 in government merch. Fuck, I didn't even know that part. That makes this whole situation even funnier. Who the fuck wants to get $500 worth of Alberta merch? Like, how big of a loser do you have to be? Like, bro, I don't even want fucking $500 of my province's merch. That's like the most cringy shit ever. I'd just rather take the 500, to be honest. The prompt was devised in the year 2022, when most women are part of the public most women are part of the public society of not in 1950. While it's unsurprising that poorly written and bigoted essays came in, it's what's semi-surprising is that they would award one of the pretty openly spewed white replacement theory. Once the news got out, the LAA took the winner's page down. Luckily, the Wayback Machine exists for the LAA. It was deleted. We will see the essays that were written and everything. But yeah, it's like essentially what it boils down to is like people or women should be getting like medals for like having children and shit, and then like we should be importing like a fuck ton of like women from other countries and whatever, which literally comes out of the Nazi playbook. Like, if you know anything about how they fucking operated, this should not be a surprise. They did this shit all the goddamn time, as well as I can't say that I'm honestly surprised that this happened in Alberta, because like it's fucking Alberta. It's like the most American province in all of Canada. Like, honestly, we should just like send Alberta or Albertans to America, since they want to be America so badly. Here are some examples of the prize-winning essay. Women have the unique strength or ability to give birth. This first line is the first line by third place winner S. Silver is just the prelude to only gets worse from there. By worse, we mean xenophobic, racist, more transphobic. This shouldn't be surprising, since she began with bio-essentialism, sexist, and classist. Might be able to watch that. Well, it is sadly popular nowadays to think that the world would be better off without humans. What? That's literally fucking eco-fascism. What the fuck? Or that Albertan children are unnecessary. As we can import foreigners to replace ourselves. This was what I was talking about here. This is sickly mentaling the amounts to a drive for cultural suicide. The first rule of health for any biological population is their ability to reproduce, pass along their way of life into the future. Women are not exactly equal to the men. So yeah, it's fucking racist, it's sexist. You have fucking eco-fascism in there too, just for good measure. So like, what else is new? I guess we can watch this.
Does everyone remember that essay contest I posted a couple months ago, where the government of Alberta asked for people to write in to say how women could better contribute to society? If you don't know what I'm talking about, see my pinned video. But they chose winners. People submitted essays, and I'm going to read for you an excerpt of the third place winner's essay on how women can better contribute to society, brought to you by the government of Alberta. While it is sadly popular nowadays to think that the world would be better off without humans, or that Alberta children are unnecessary as we can import foreigners to replace ourselves, This is a sick mentality that amounts to a drive for cultural suicide. The first rule of health for any biological population is their ability to reproduce and pass along their way of life into the future. Women are not exactly equal to men. This biological reality is also under attack by present-day delusion. To try to promote that women break into careers that men traditionally dominate is not only misguided.
So, whoops. So when they mean that, it's like, you know, women should be fucking stay in the household and all that, like, and not get, and not become like independent, to, you know, just support themselves and other shit like that. As well as they shouldn't be doing like certain times of work because they're labeled as men's job by these fucking dumbasses.
But it is harmful. Such a focus detracts from the languishing unique strength and the truly important role that women have in the preservation of our community, culture, and species. Unfortunately, present-day government policies all too often have this misguided and harmful aim. Many women now realize in their late 30s that they actually want a child after having been taught that career was what mattered earlier in their lives, and they then regret.
So, when it comes to like career is important earlier on in their lives, that's not necessarily wrong, because in a capitalist organization of the economy, you want to try and focus your efforts on actually being able to, you know, support yourself, which is slowly becoming less relevant, because, you know, you can't afford basic necessities, especially now, which is why fascism tends to get a lot of traction during economic downtimes, like during recessions like we're facing now, or during depressions, or even during like huge economic collapse. You know, this happened in Germany, which led to World War II after the events of World War One. So generally there tends to be a rise in both, like, say, fascism when capitalism fails or is showing signs of failing, and you have things like, say, socialism or communism on the other hand that will they'll also be on the rise, which is why, like, socialism and communism tend to be higher on that, because, you know, everything's controlled by the people and whatnot. So it's also like a reason on why so many like fascist parties will often label themselves as, like, say, socialist, or like the people, or like for the people. Like, they associate, or they put names that people associate with good, like, say, people. It's not just North America or Europe. Every country will do this. So you have to pay attention to what's going on.
Regret not having done it earlier, when they were in their prime.
As for, you know, women having children later, like, yeah, no shit, everyone will probably want to have a kid at some point. If I'm sorry, but like, if people can't afford to even like support themselves, then how are they able to, you know, support a child? Like, especially like if you're going to be going back to school to like better yourself in like forms of education or whatnot, it's like nigh impossible. Like, I think should have all the basic necessities at the very least free, you know, healthcare, housing, food, water, hydro, clothing, you know, shit like that, as well as like classify as more luxury say like internet, phone, and that shit. But nowadays, that's becoming more and more of a necessity rather than a luxury, because everything is essentially done online. United Conservative Caucus, which is equivalent to the modern Democrats, which we know about. Aaron O'Toole would make an excellent Democrat. Member Jackie Armstrong, Humnook, head of heads the status of women's division of the LAA, and was one of the judges on the committee. Though she initially tried to distance herself from responsibility, Armstrong has since come out to condemn the essay and say that ultimately this is not her. Even if she were only okay with with sexism, transphobia, and racism, all these service with each other and white supremacy. It's not like these are just American issues. It's as the ideas have led to violence in Canada too, which, yes, this is true. But like, come on, how do you completely miss like all the fucking dog whistles in the third essay? Like, you either have to be incredibly stupid or you have to be a fascist. Like, it's one of the two, right? It's ridiculous. So this is straight out of the Nazi playbook. I believe that the best way to approach would be to reward families for reproductive services, both with financial reward to offset the financial burden they are taking on with medals to symbolize their value and achievement to having 2+ children, encouraging our society to reorientate in this healthy perspective that would provide the greatest good for Alberta going forward, and would alternative many of the problems that we are currently facing. So no, that's ridiculous. The Nazis did the exact same thing. They gave medals out to women who like pumped out kids to preserve the Übermensch, or at least to try and create the Übermensch. And the same shit is being called on in fucking Alberta. Like, Alberta is wild to me. Like, they're just nuts. Alberta quite literally is like the fucking like Florida or Texas of Canada. It's the fucking worst, man. White supremacist theory, or white replacement theory, is perhaps a relevant new term only coming up within the last 12 years, but has roots that go back a century. The NPR host Lulu Garcia Navarro called it an old idea once on a few fringe of white supremacist dogma, which is true. It still is. That is being newly embraced by places like Fox News. I mean, yeah, have people like not ever seen fucking like the Cucker Show? Her guest, history professor Ethelyn Bilu explained the concept as the idea that somehow non-white people or outsiders, or strangers or foreigners, will take over the United States via immigration, reproduction, and seizure of political power. Which, this is completely a fucking Nazi thing. They they have in America, and like even here too, they have absolutely no fucking political power. So that doesn't even matter. And like it doesn't matter because they're gonna get all fucking killed anyways, according to like some dumbasses. But no, like the only reason why they're so afraid of like the majority shifting is because they see how they treat the fucking minorities, and you know, which is shit. So they're going to be, of course, they're going to be afraid of it. So again, this noxious ideology is not exclusive to the United States or to our current country or century. Silver's essay nods to these roots as many points, including her saying that women should be rewarded for having 2 or more kids, as previously established when she is talking about non-white women, about white women, which is psychotic. Under leadership of the Nazi Party, Aryan German women who had multiple children without disabilities were rewarded Mother's Cross. Like I said, they were given medals for having kids. Women were awarded bronze +4 to gold +8 editions of the depending on how many children they had. Again, also with non-disabilities, like say autism, because you know the fucking Nazis killed people with autism. Financial support programs, speaking about the US, are needed across the board, regardless of family type or structure. I mean, it's true here too. We need our fair share of financial support as well, because like with cost of living going up and everything, like wages staying stagnant, and it's just unsustainable for a vast majority of Canadians. Plus, also, a lot of the privatization of our healthcare system going on, which is crazy. When accounting for families with kids, the type of financial and emotional support that should be provided to parents shouldn't exclude a certain race, ethnicity, or citizenship status. We just need help the people that need it the most first, since we have the ability to make it happen, but not our government will generally not do so. I again encourage Armstrong, Silver, and even those that recognize issues within this essay to please read Sisters in Hate by, I don't know. The book perfectly lays out our roots of this bigotry and how the popularity of this idea spreads among many women, many in this age group, in the time of Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I mean, yeah, so that's the gist of it. We can go on to this now.
It's quite problematic.
No, I don't want to go to there. Why did I click there?
It's quite problematic. There seem to be sort of culture wars, even white supremacist kind of language in here, that somehow women are responsible for producing more children in order to protect a culture that is in danger.
Backlash against Alberta's government from all sides after a contest awarded third prize to an essay containing sexist and racist rhetoric. The Her Vision Inspires essay contest was aimed at giving Alberta women between the ages of 17 and 24 the opportunity to share their vision for the future and what they would do if elected into office. While the first and second place winners talked about bringing positive change to the community and helping more women get into politics, the third place winner claims women are not equal to men and says families should be rewarded for their reproductive services.
It's difficult to understand how someone could justify giving an award to such
The first and second place winners didn't even really provide any solutions. The fourth and fifth did. There were only 5 entries, and only 2 of them were good, and neither of them actually won.
An essay, and it, of course, raises questions about the government that established the contest and gave this award.
The essay writer says women shouldn't break into what she refers to as careers that should be held by men. Instead, she writes Alberta women should do their job in making more babies in order to stop importing foreigners to replace them and cause a cultural suicide.
It just becomes so.
When they mean cultural suicide, they mean white culture. And, like, white culture doesn't even fucking exist. It's a reaction to black culture, which was created out of necessity due to the slave trade and how a lot of black people came from didn't have any knowledge of their heritage and whatnot, so they had to create their own identity, which to this day is still being perverted by white people and, like, the forms of rap and shit, because they take over it.
So
Wait, what? That's not good. Heck, OBS. Don't know why that's that. I don't know why it's doing it for this one. If I refresh the page.
It's quite
That's weird. Okay.
and then you've got to swerve and unpack the misogyny, and then you got to get back to the racism and the colonialism. Oh, now we're back on the misogyny. And the fact that it can be done all in like one sentence, much less, 500 words, it's debilitating to read something that painfully hateful.
Dr. Rebecca Sullivan says her heart breaks someone would hold these kinds of views, and while they're not appropriate, people should direct comments at the government and its lack of transparency with the competition, not a young woman who may just be misinformed.
I mean, there's a very good chance that she herself is a Nazi. There's a very good chance of that. Like, yes, I was misguided in my earlier years too, but I don't really think the Alberta Conservatives promoting this is a good thing. It's a fucking terrible thing. The fact that a lot of people, especially on the Conservative side, aren't too opposed to this is very fucking concerning. And, like, they're only condemning it now, considering that they're getting a lot of backlash and heat from it. But, I mean, what else is new from conservatives? I mean, it literally looks like a neo-fascist in the form of fucking Pierre Poilievre will be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, so I can't really say I'm surprised.
More distraught when we think, oh my goodness, this person holds such horrifying views that will cause not only incredible harm to so many, but also to themselves. And breaks my heart.
The Legislative Assembly says nobody in that department nor the Speaker's office was involved in selecting the winners or picking the MLAs judging the contest. And initially, Alberta's Minister of Status of Women also refused to claim responsibility for the failure. But then, late Tuesday afternoon, the minister admitted it was her responsibility and her...
I mean, like, are we really surprised by this, though? Because, like, Alberta has been dog shit for such a long time. Like, Jason Kenney fucked up, like, big time with Alberta. And the fact that they're promoting this shit is just psychotic to me. Like, it's completely ridiculous. Like, you don't need to be promoting Nazi shit. I'm sorry. And anyone who actually supports that shit should be, like, ousted out of their fucking positions. I'm sorry.
Failure, saying it's clear the process failed and I want to apologize for my role in that. The selection of this particular essay and awarding it with third prize was a failure on my part as head of the judging panel. However, the government...
I mean, like, how do you miss it though? Like, you clearly saw that they were there was mentions of like shit that Nazis did, like awarding women medals, like for like having non-disabled kids, and specifically like white women too. So like, it's fucking stupid. Like, don't play stupid.
Still refuses to release the names of the other MLAs who were selected to judge this contest. Meantime, the Alberta NDP called the essay and the entire situation reprehensible, saying it's a terrible message to be sending to young women in Alberta.
Sexism, racism.
I knew people were dumb, but this is some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen. I mean, first of all, it's coming from Alberta, so of course it's gonna be dumb. Like, not saying that like every Albertan's dumb. Far from it. There's plenty of good people in Alberta. It's just that when they promote all this fucking like Nazi shit and like being like, yeah, that's a good idea, and then turning heel when they get into a little bit of hot water for it, and not releasing all the fucking other MLAs that were part of it, it's just crazy to me. But yes, it is a really dumb thing.
Hate. This is not what any government should be celebrating. Yet increasingly, these views are becoming acceptable in this UCP government and even now applauded.
In Edmonton, Safe Kaiser, City News.
Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6, and I want to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection to this land. Yesterday, the UCP government announced the award winners of their Her Vision Inspires essay contest. However, inspiring it was not. The bronze medal winning essay chosen by the UCP contained comments that are misogynistic, sexist, transphobic, racist, and fascist.
You forgot classist too. It was very fucking classist as well.
I will not repeat all of them here today. Indeed, some of them are really quite reprehensible. But I do want to speak directly to two of the comments in the essay. First, this quote. Quote, "Women are not exactly equal to men. To promote that women break into careers that men traditionally dominate is not only misguided, but is harmful." This is a terrible message to send to the young women of Alberta. It's a message that I, as a mother, including of a young girl, completely reject. Women are working hard to break through barriers in a society where sexism is prevalent and continues to keep them from achieving financial, physical, and psychological security. And as leaders, we must never stop pushing for more women in male-dominated industries. Every study shows that this leads to better representation and diversity in governance and leadership in all sectors, including politics. Which is why we recently made the commitment in the NDP to once again ensure that our cabinet table will be at least 50% women. It's frankly embarrassing to have to assert women's equality in 2023. A second quote from the winning essay. Quote, "While it is sadly popular nowadays to think that Alberta children are unnecessary as we can import foreigners to replace ourselves is a sickly mentality that amounts to a drive for cultural suicide."
So not only is this classic Nazi playbook shit, it's also very like, we already went over this and we already read snippets of it and we heard the whole thing read out as well. But there's actually a lot of eco-fascism is there as well, in there as well.
This is an absolutely reprehensible claim. It is a nod to the racist replacement theory that drives white nationalist hate, and which, according to the RCMP, is one of the ways that these dangerous kinds of groups recruit young people. This is absolutely horrific, and these...
Remember when we covered the Buffalo shooting that happened in America? And how fucking horrifying it was? He touted the exact same fucking thing as Silver did in her essay. It's kind of crazy to me that, you know, this is being supported, like, all throughout fucking North America. It's silly. It's silly, and it's also very fucking terrifying at the same time.
These comments should be condemned by elected leaders, not given awards. Sexism, racism, hate. This is not what any government should be celebrating. Yet increasingly, these views are becoming acceptable in this UCP government, and even now applauded.
I mean, that's just how conservatives operate, though. They'll either fucking whitewash the dog whistles to make them sound more appealing in order to get elected, or like we've seen more and more in commonplace, once they get a little bit more comfortable, is that they'll say the fucking fascist parts out loud. Like, it's crazy, man.
Applauded. This is about more than an essay contest. This is about two visions for women in this province. Under one, you have a UCP government that has consistently failed to support women. Zero new investment in childcare.
Not just to support women, but to support Albertans in general. Alberta is facing a housing crisis just like the rest of Canada, as well as starting to privatize their healthcare system. This is what the Conservatives want. Don't misconstrue anything that they're doing. This is completely what they want.
Underwhelming support for entrepreneurs, refusal to stand up for women's reproductive health rights, and failure to support women's health care more generally. This essay contest was from a project that Jackie Armstrong-Hominick, the Status of Women Associate Minister and MLA for Fort Saskatchewan-Vegreville, and Associate Minister Armstrong-Hominick, along with a panel of female MLAs, had a role in choosing this essay, which reduced the role of women in this province to their reproductive capacity. Albertans need to know which UCP MLAs were on this panel. I can tell you that no NDP MLAs were asked nor participated in this panel. And yet, ironically, women and people who can get pregnant cannot deliver babies at the Fort Saskatchewan Hospital right now, and we've heard nothing from MLA Armstrong-Hominick about that. She refuses to speak about this issue.
I mean, a lot of the problems that are facing Alberta right now can 100% be, like, traced back to the UPC. Like, is it really any surprising? Is it really surprising that, you know, that they did this shit? Like, I mean, it's just silly to think that they're not the main problem that's going on here.
Yesterday, my amazing colleague, the MLA for Edmonton Highland Norwood, Janice Irwin, went to Fort Saskatchewan to fight for those Albertans and those living in the dozen or so other communities across this province with no obstetrics care, while we are the wealthiest province in Canada. These are the kinds of issues that women in Alberta expect their elected...
I love how full of themselves Alberta and Ontario are, because both of them state the exact same thing. Like, oh, we're the wealthiest province in all of Canada. I mean, it depends on which regard you're referring to. When it comes to manufacturing, Ontario has a beat, but if it comes to like gas and oil production, then yeah, of course.
Officials to be focused on, not essay contests. Albertans want to pay the bills. They want to grow their businesses. They want good health care and good schools for their kids. That's what Rachel Notley, myself, and our entire Alberta NDP caucus want to do and are committed to doing. I'm here to pledge that should Albertans elect an NDP government, we will stand up for women's equality. We'll create economic opportunities.
I mean, I personally don't like her, but I do think that Alberta should have an NDP government. Because, I mean, like, are you really gonna fucking vote for Jason Kenney again? Like, come on. Jason Kenney's a fucking loser. He's even more of a loser than Doug Ford, you know, the guy who loves to eat bees because I guess they're tasty. Maybe he didn't have any honey on his Honey Nut Cheerios, so he decided to eat some fucking bees. Like, what a loser he is.
Opportunity. We'll protect healthcare, invest in education, celebrate diversity, fight hate, and promote women in leadership and help them break down barriers.
Wealth has no worth when it comes to government. Money is dumb. I mean, yes, money is dumb, but when it comes to politics, wealth means everything because, you know, we have lobbying legal, so which is just a fancy way of saying bribing. Like, a government is supposed to be there for its people, and the fact that they take a lot of fucking donations from corporations and wealthy individuals to get whatever they want is psychotic. No, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. So, in this assessment, you are wrong. Oh, when it comes to good government, I mean, yeah, in that, yes. When it comes to good government, yes. But money plays a huge role in fucking governments. But wealth isn't necessarily a bad thing if the government has it, because they are able to, you know, start infrastructure projects, for example, or say, have national education, or increasing the amount of money being spent towards healthcare services, for example. And yes, bees. Doug Ford ate a bee, and it was the funniest shit I've seen all week. He was attacking Mother Nature, and Mother Nature decided to attack back.
Thank you, and I'll now take questions.
Thank you. We'll open up the floor to questions. Just a reminder to everyone.
Uh-oh, we got Florida questions, boys.
The raise hand function to get in the queue. For everyone on the phone is star 9. We'll start first in the room.
Hi, Raki. Dean from CP. Can I just read you one line from the minister's office responding to this, and then see what you think of it? So they seem to be sort of saying they're backhandedly defending it and then condemning it. The essay contest, they say, was intended to reflect a broad range of opinions from young Alberta women on what democracy.
Bro, I love when conservatives say, "Oh, we're just trying to hear a diverse group of opinions." No, you're not. You're not. You're just trying to sweep the rhetoric underneath the rug. Despite, you know, the conservatives actually agreeing with that, because, I mean, if like we've done so on the broadcast here, we've covered, you know, the NDP, not the NDP, the conservative leadership debates, and it was the funniest shit ever, because, you know, we had a bunch of hogs going at each other's throats to seeing which one can be the most fucking fascist. And, like, it's the new common ground for fucking conservatives. They're going to repeat, like, a bunch of fascist rhetoric and all that. Like, it's nothing new. Just the framing changes. That's all that it is.
Democracy means. While the essay in question certainly does not represent the views of all women, myself included, I assume that means Jackie Armstrong, the essay in question should not have been chosen.
So I have a few responses to that. First of all, you know, this notion of a diversity of opinions is being used as a cover for allowing for hateful speech to be
Told you.
celebrated by the government. This is not about a diversity of opinions. They've actually chosen to celebrate and.
So yeah, the funny thing is when they say a diversity of opinions, the only two that were like there was 5 submitted, and the 2 that actually proposed solutions for a lot of the problems that Alberta has been facing were intentionally kept out. Because they actually provided like clear and concise ways on how to tackle, say, the housing crisis, for example, or inflation. But they left them out because they also criticized the UPC's or the UCP's form of governance and how dog shit it is. And for context, I imagine that they were submitted by some form of leftist, like leftist women in Alberta, because like we'll go over them, but they definitely have like a leftist feel to them.
You know, award an essay that actually is talking about white nationalist racist theories. This is not about diversity of opinions. It's about saying a refusal by the government to say certain views are not acceptable in a democratic, free country. And yet they clearly, not only did they celebrate and award it, they chose it. I mean, this is what we have to be clear about. If the minister, associate minister, is saying it should not have been chosen, well, she was the one who chose it. Her and a panel of her colleagues within the UCP were the judging panel, according to the website and the contest rules, who selected this. So the question is, why is the judge who chose it now saying they shouldn't have chosen it? And then who did? But ultimately, this went up. There are a number of checks and balances that go in place before something is promoted like this, put up on a website that's celebrated, and nobody within the UCP stopped and said, this is inappropriate. This is not the vision for Alberta's future. This is not the vision for Alberta women that we want to celebrate. In fact, it was put up, and the only reason Albertans are aware of it is because my colleague, Janice Irwin, brought it to the attention of Albertans. Otherwise, I think this would have been stood for some time as a celebrated essay on Alberta women.
What does it say about this government? We can't seem to get a lot of basic details about who picked it, what the rules were, and it seems like from this statement also that they're...
I mean, they're just doing so to cover up things. Like, that's the only reason why. Like, they're trying to cover their tracks, and they're doing, like, a fucking awful job about it because the Conservatives are allowed to be essentially as fascist as they want because they know they won't face any repercussions for being in it. Like, and the funny thing is like, the Conservatives in Canada would essentially be the fucking Democrats in America. Like, it's crazy. Like, this shit is, like, not okay, man.
They keep sort of pushing us over to the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Canadian Region Association. I mean, who's responsible here? Doesn't that need to be made crystal clear from this government, particularly if they're going to start handing out prizes for these contests?
Well, who is responsible is a very good question that a lot of Albertans are asking right now. Certainly, there's a long track record here, this government failing to take accountability for the decisions they've made and the choices they've made. We saw that time and time again with COVID when rules were broken and who was responsible. Albertans rarely got a clear answer on that. But secondly, I would say, you know, this is a government that has been continuously mired in its own internal drama, and they're consumed by what's going on with their leadership race. Before that, it was Jason Kenney's leadership review. It has been one thing after another that has distracted this government from actually doing the work that Albertans elected them to do, which is to govern in a way that supports all Albertans. Once again, we are seeing that this government is not paying attention. They're not accountable. They're not answering questions. They're not taking responsibility. I think Albertans are exhausted by this kind of approach from their government, and they're looking for a government that's focused on working hard for them and to represent them.
Thanks to Shaylan Skolsky with CTV. Outside of that statement that we've received in the media, a lot of the details, as you mentioned, are unknown, and now we're noticing that the website has been completely wiped. The essays are no longer available unless you screenshotted them. What do you make of the...
Or if they've been uploaded to places, say, like TikTok or Twitter, which we'll get into. There were actually some really good ones in there, which cover.
Removal of all of this information.
Well, I think it's a no-brainer that this should have been taken down, but I think the bigger question is, how did it even come up in the first place? Why was it ever posted? Why was it ever chosen? Why was it ever receiving an award and celebrated by this government in the first place? I think it's the very least they can do is to take it down, but I think Albertans deserve some transparency and accountability as to the decision-making. What were the criteria that went into selecting this essay to celebrate? Who was involved in that decision? And what really is the commitment of this government to supporting women? I mean, we have seen a track record from this government of failing them in terms of access to reproductive health care. They were silent when Roe versus Wade was overturned, even though...
I mean, of course they were silent. They want it to be, they want fucking abortion rights to be overturned in Canada too. They were like silently cheering that abortion rights were overturned in America. And they want it overturned here. Like, a lot of them, like especially like those that are running for like national positions, are being like, oh yeah, no, I completely support women's reproductive rights and everything. But realistically, they saw that it happened in America, so it could easily happen here. Like, women know this and are terrified of it, and they know this and are terrified of it. Or not terrified of it, I should say. They're ecstatic by it.
Thousands of Alberta women were concerned about what that meant for them and what that meant for Canada. They have, as we've just discussed, there's a lack of obstetrics care in several communities across this province. That's critical health issues for women. We know that women and their families are deeply concerned about the cost of living right now, how they're going to pay for groceries, how they're going to pay for gas, and we have no real measures coming from this government. The questions Albertans should be asking is why isn't the UCP committed to supporting women? And that's why I'm very proud of the work that we've done and we continue to do as the Alberta NDP. You know, we expanded access to reproductive health services when we were in government. We've been clear that we will continue to do that if we're elected. We've been clear and consistent in our commitment to affordable, accessible childcare. We've been clear that we need to tackle head-on the challenges that have been created by this government with respect to healthcare, and that we have to make life more affordable. These are things that Albertan women and families really want to hear about, not essay contests celebrating hate and misogyny.
Yeah, you talk about the need for transparency and accountability on this. We're seeing obviously a lot of questions circling online as to how the Associate Minister of the Status of Women could be responsible for choosing such a thing. I guess, what other actions or consequences would you like to see? Do you think she needs to step away from this role?
Well, you know,
I think, at the very least, she should be stepping down. There is no excuse that this should be happening. And the fact that they use like the diversity of opinions talking point is ridiculous. She needs to 100% step down at the very least. But it's not going to happen. Because conservatives can get away with whatever the fuck they want.
I'm not really sure what she's doing in this role right now to begin with. I mean, we have a lame duck premier and a lame duck cabinet right now. You can pick your ministry and you'll find that there's a minister who's not working right now.
I mean, that's like all conservatives though. All that they do is just fucking slash shit and then pocket the money that they slash. They don't do shit. They just cut taxes and then like take away fucking rights and freedoms of people. That's all that they do.
We're hearing pretty much silence as they're all mired up in their own internal drama. I mean, absolutely an apology needs to come from everyone associated with this essay contest, particularly the Associate Minister for Status of Women. But that's not enough. I mean, Albertans aren't going to accept just another apology because there's questions about how it came about in the first place. But also, they want to see that their government is actually committed to supporting women's equality, supporting families and communities and businesses that are critically important for Alberta to thrive. We are not seeing that. We're not seeing anything from this government right now. They are distracted by their own drama, and they're not hard at work for Albertans. So I'd like to certainly see some clear repudiation, not just from all sitting UCP MLAs, but also from all leadership candidates. But that's just a starting point.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go now to the phone lines. Caller, your line is open.
This might be an essay question in and of itself, but this essay was written by a young Alberta woman. How do you think we got to a point where women in this province are internalizing these kind of messages. Like you mentioned that it's the type of thing repeated in Great Replacement, the replacement theory.
Do you want to know how this spreads within, like, even say groups of women? Speaking from experience, especially if you're younger or if you're incredibly like idiotic and like don't know shit about how the world operates, you see all these things going wrong in the capitalist system, and you want an answer. So, and you're told by, say, communists or socialists or anarchists or whatever the fuck, that like, hey, what you were taught all throughout your life is wrong. None of the systems care. None of the systems care about you as an individual, and it only exists for those who have everything to make more, whilst you will get paid pennies on the dollar and will be fucked over. And for me personally, transitioning over from like neo-Nazi, almost pretty much, to where I am now, being like a Marxist-Leninist, or with some like anarcho-communist views. It was a very long and hard journey to deprogram things on that I thought were true and everything, as well as, you know, having to like just asking questions about things and like questioning why I believed it and what got me to where I was. So there's that side of the argument, which is very, very difficult to do. And then there is the other side of the argument, which is the more right-wing extremist view, which is, you know, it completely goes with the capitalist organization of the economy, being like, well, you know, say immigrants are going to be taking your jobs, or say, you know, certain groups of individuals are spreading disease or whatever. Like, it requires an outgroup. And when it comes to women, they hear the supposed financial incentive that they're going to be getting for, say, pumping out kids, which doesn't happen. We know this doesn't happen. If there was financial incentive to have children, I think if we took like the more Norwegian approach to it, we wouldn't be in the predicament that we're in, because, you know, is it Norway or is it Sweden? I don't remember. I think it could be Sweden, but they actually do provide financial incentives for having children. Say, get like, oh, what is it? I think it's like, I want to say half a year off for parental leave, as well as the government will help pay for your first year for sure of having a child. And then if, you know, you're not doing too well financially, they'll also support you throughout the early child's life, because, you know, having an infant is incredibly expensive. So they don't provide any benefits to actually having children, and taking a lot of stress off of the women who want to have kids, or, you know, the women who, you know, they fucking strip rights from, forcing them to have kids. Like, they just frankly do not care. That's how this shit happens. Is that fascism is a lot easier to believe when you live in a capitalist organization of the economy, because, as we all know, fascism is an off branch of capitalism. And the hearing the other side, like the more left side, is very hard to understand, considering that, you know, everything is run by capitalists. Just a floof that treats people like people and want to make life a little bit better. I mean, yeah, like, most people actually do want that, though. But a lot of the rhetoric that comes out of fascist groups as well as conservatives, you'll often hear fits the narrative, or fits a narrative that, like, it's always an out group that has to be dealt with, and then, like, those who are deemed valuable to society, you know, just flat out will get, like, whatever perks they want. Which is why the Nazis promoted a lot of the Übermensch, or the superior race, which is a completely whole different can of worms I don't feel like opening right now.
Or these white supremacist views. How did you think this happens?
White sperms, oh no.
Thanks for the question, Catherine. I will say that, I'm a mother of two young children, including a daughter, and I'm deeply troubled to know these views are out there. I can't comment on the specific author. I don't know who the author is. I don't know why she wrote it.
Silver.
I clearly believe that these views are deeply misguided. But I think one of the reasons why I think views like this continue to grow in terms of and proliferate and get volume and strength is because governments like the UCP government here have not only not condemned it, but they've actually celebrated it by granting it an award. And this is just one example, but I mean, the problem is we are not seeing a number of conservative MLAs and even at the federal level condemn hate and white nationalism. In fact, they continue to tacitly or explicitly endorse these views by giving voice to them and giving them platform.
They also lean into it.
When we ask ourselves why are these views coming up, I mean, I am deeply troubled as a woman, as a parent, that these views are out there. But I'm very disappointed that the leaders in our community, particularly political leaders, are not taking a firm stance to say no. And even in I believe the statement received by the Associate Minister for Status of Women talked about how this contest was about reflecting a diversity of opinions, which inherently gives more value and platform to the opinions that were celebrated in their award by saying this is just a diversity of opinions. No, this is actually...
And they left out the more socialist-leaning opinions. Kind of sus to me, you ask.
Misogyny, it is hate, it is racist, and we should not just not be celebrating it. We should actually be openly condemning it.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
And I guess, why is it that political leaders, such as the ones who chose this to win, why do they not see this the way you see it? Why do they not see it as misogynistic?
Because they low-key actually think like that. Hiding information is nothing news. I mean, it depends, though. It depends on circumstance, because the thing is like, when we get into the Trump stuff, if you're going to be hiding information, it can be incredibly newsworthy. Like, granted, I think the Trump stuff that we'll be talking about later is incredibly fucking funny. So, but yeah, no, like, it's nice. It's good to recognize this shit when it happens, and then be like, hey, no, don't do this. Like, we need to fucking talk to conservatives like they're fucking children. Being like, oh, Billy, you've been a bad boy, and promoting a bunch of shit, a bunch of nonsense. I think it's time you take a time out. Like, honestly, we need to fucking talk to conservatives like they're fucking 5.
racist?
I can't answer that question, Catherine. I'm not sure why they don't see this. You know, I don't know if they're seeing some political gain for themselves in terms of you know, who they might gain as supporters. I'm not sure.
The PPC. That's all you need to know. That's the support that they're going to be gaining. The PPC.
I would hope that it's not because any of the members actually deeply hold these views themselves, but it's beginning to get difficult to challenge that view, because it certainly seems like they're willing to give airtime and platform and space and support to these kinds of statements. You know, I would invite any of these members who might think that there is some validity to these views to spend some time with diverse communities, spend some time with my constituents, spend some time with Indigenous communities to talk about what the impact of this hate actually is. But I imagine most of these political leaders already know that.
Bro, no shot they are going to be talking to Indigenous people. The only time when they'll be talking to Indigenous people is when they're gonna be ready to fucking clap their cheeks because they're protesting a fucking pipeline going through their small amount of land that they were given. That's the only time that they'd be willing to talk to Indigenous people.
And so for I can't presume why they think they need to give airtime to this, but certainly they feel like there's some political value for themselves in doing so.
Okay, we'll go to the next caller. Please state your name and outlet. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, it's Lisa Johnson from the Edmonton Journal. I just wanted to loop back to a previous question and get some clarity on this. I mean, the Associate Minister is the only UCP member that we know was involved in this essay contest. The other members of the judging panel, we don't know who they are. I'm wondering if you would you call for her to resign over this?
Yes.
Like I would like to know who the other panel members were on this.
Everyone who is involved in the selection process for the essays that were selected should at the very least resign. It won't happen, but it's a bare minimum that they should be doing. The UCP should be holding their constituents accountable. But since the UCP actually believes in this shit, that's not going to happen. As far as I'm concerned, they should all be fired for this. But we already know it's not going to happen.
For this contest,
and it's deeply frustrating too,
because each of those elected officials are also need to be held accountable for giving air and space and you know, platform to these views. They're also individual members who will be up for re-election, and I think their constituents have a right to know that they chose this kind of an essay to celebrate. Ultimately, for me, I want to just see a government that is focused on doing the work of supporting women. I mean, that shouldn't be too much to ask. I'm not sure that the you know, Associate Minister has done much of anything in her role except for now, you know, been the spokesperson for and key to the judging panel of a contest that celebrates hate and racism and misogyny. So, you know, I don't know if she's qualified to be in this role or anymore. I just think Albertans are tired of this government that is not taking their job seriously, that is not committed to actually taking actions to help Alberta families and communities and businesses.
What are you talking about, though? Jason Kenney does a terrific job.
That does not seem to be their focus, and Albertans are sick of it. The lack of action, the poor actions, the misjudgment by these UCP ministers just keep going on and on and on, and Albertans are just frankly exhausted.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to touch on something in this particular essay. The vision of Alberta that this author imagines includes a government awarding women for achieving childbirth, for having 2+ children. I'm wondering if you want to speak to the historical precedent for governments that have this kind of policy.
Like we covered earlier, it was fucking Nazis that did this. And Nazis were the only ones that have ever done this. Because if you had 2 perfectly healthy children with no you know, disabilities, like say autism or whatever, you would get fucking medals for it. And it's like the most psychotic thing imaginable.
Well, I think, you know, as I stated in my comments, I don't use the term fascism lightly. It's not a thing that I think we should throw around easily because I think it starts to dull its meaning. But I think in this situation...
I mean, do you hear how fucking often conservatives throw around like fucking Marxism, socialism, and communism? It still riles up their fucking voter base, being like, oh, those fucking libs are such big commies. Oh, they're so evil. Vote for us and we'll take down these commie libs. We'll take them down, brother.
I mean, I think you've probably seen enough parallels drawn between the ideology of, for example, Nazis in 1930s Germany, where the call was for women's role and their obligation and their duty to their society was to reproduce in order to preserve, in that case, you know, the German race and culture.
Where have I heard this before? I've heard something very, very similar to this before. Where have I heard it? Could it be that I've heard it from the Conservative Party? I don't know.
And that is the very same language that is used in this essay. It's not only, you know, limiting women's entire...
is just hype words at the point. I mean, yeah, I think when it comes to that, I think that, you know, we should be throwing around the words like fucking fascism, Nazis, white supremacists more, to be honest. Like, it will rally up fucking libs. Like, leftists already know what the fuck's going on. But, like, if you want to get libs on your side, you know, you need to throw around these words more. Being like, hey, these fucking dumbass Nazi conservatives are being psychotic again. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that we should be throwing it around more, to be honest.
Being and productive value to whether or not they produce children, but it is actually stated in this essay that, you know, that is important in order to avoid importing foreigners, which the...
What? Oh no, immigration? That's terrible. It's so bad for the economy. It's the absolute worst thing that can happen for the economy. What's that? Having people accept less work for your fucking coal mine in Ontario? Oh, it's the worst thing. As a business owner, it's the worst thing I could ever imagine. I hate paying those gross foreigners. Oh man. Like, no, it's silly. Like, immigration is not a bad thing. It helps if you want to take like a fucking psychotic approach to it. Like, it helps keep populations stable, as well as it also helps keep the fucking market afloat, because without the fucking backbone, or without the labor of the backbone of society being immigrants, we would have no fucking like GDP or fucking anything getting done. And like, hell, the fucking these dumbass white European descendants that are spewing all this shit out are fucking immigrants too. As far as I'm concerned, if they're gonna be acting like this, I say they should get the fuck off of my land.
The author relates to being cultural suicide. This is not a dog whistle. It's not a tangential connection.
I'll be nice though. I'll give them fucking Labrador, because no one fucking wants to live in Labrador.
There is a clear connection between the language used in this essay and similar ideologies in fascist societies and fascist examples in the history, such as Nazi Germany. And that's what's deeply troubling. It is continuing to get platform and value. And as an Albertan, as a woman of color, as a parent, as a contributing member of our society and community, I am deeply troubled by this, and I'd like to know how this happened and how it happened without anybody raising their alarms and saying this is inappropriate. Not just inappropriate, this is tantamount to hate speech. This has to be
Which, for the record, hate speech is not protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, even though you have a bunch of dipshit racists and fucking conservatives saying that it is. No, it's not. Hate speech does not fall underneath the protections of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's why it's a crime.
Not celebrate. I simply don't have an explanation as to how this happened.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller. Jessica, your line is open.
Hi there, Jessica Goose with Global News here. So we've been talking a lot about what you'd like to see the minister maybe do in regards to a response for an apology, condemning, things like that. What type of either ramifications, learning, things like that would you like to see from the author?
Well, again, I can't really specifically comment on the author. I mean, I believe the views expressed in the essay are deeply misguided. What I will say is that part of the work that we did is the Alberta.
Yeah, she's getting kind of boring. She's just kind of going in circles. Being like, yeah, it's like Nazi rhetoric and everything, which we already know.
At the very least, I do think.
We watched this. So. Shoot.
The FBI raided Trump's house in Mar-a-Lago.
Well, we'll talk about that, but here's the ones that were not chosen.
If you remember the disastrous UCP essay contest, you know, the one where they gave the third place prize to the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale? Well, here's something interesting. We now know how many essays were submitted. So 3 winners, 5 essays. Would you like to see the 2 essays that were not chosen? I think you do. First up, we have this one by a person named Amelia Earhart. Not the pilot, a different one. And I'm not going to read you the whole thing out loud, but I encourage you to screenshot it.
I'll read it out loud for you guys. Oh, jeez. That's so small. Alberta is breaking, but we can come back together. It's up to my generation, young activists, people coming of age in a highly politicized world, and a generation with more access to information than any other generation before us, to bring us back together. I will see my generation unite where previous generations have been polarized, holding a person-first perspective on each issue, whether someone is a drug user or a premier. They deserve access to the same quality of life: healthcare, food, housing. Communities thrive when each person in the community is properly cared for. This ideal is not the Alberta I live in. I live in an Alberta where opioid crisis has been killing thousands of citizens, and where countless people have lost their lives to the cold every winter. I live in Alberta where the healthcare system has been so overloaded for so many years that the opioid crisis and frostbitten people with no place to go land on the bottom of the priority list. I live in Alberta where the healthcare system is purely reactionary, with very few respective protocols. In the future, I see Alberta leading the way to hey, I do drugs and I wouldn't be treated like shit because of that. I mean, you do. Healthcare in Canada, I see us breaking away from work until you drop culture and moving towards a healthy culture of work-life balance. The first step is becoming a truly healthy community, is caring for members of that community, and currently the oops, it's in the way. Get out of the way, man.
There you go. But it is powerful.
Get out of the way. He's in the way, guys.
There you go.
There. Members of the community of Alberta are not being cared for properly. The freedoms we have in Alberta come with responsibilities. You cannot freely drive a vehicle without taking responsibility for keeping your license, registration, and insurance up to date. In the future, I see an Alberta that understands the balance of rights and responsibilities and seeks to care for those who are systematically underprivileged, to take care for those in need. Alberta needs to lead the way in taxing the wealthy and funding social programs such as women's shelters, hospitals, pharmacare, and supervised consumption sites. A province thrives when its people thrive. And Alberta needs to stop neglecting its people. We are hardworking, free people, and I would be honored to be part of a province that values its people no matter who they are or what they do. I would be honored to be part of a province where no one froze to death, no one died of overdose, and no one had to choose between rent and groceries. This is an Alberta we can have, and an Alberta I can see happening in my lifetime. We need to put the initial grunt work and financial support so we and our children can live in a world without the threat of poverty, death, addiction, or financial ruin. We deserve this, and we can have this. Alberta is in for a future of unity, freedom, and success for every citizen. Whoops.
But it is powerful. It's a pointed criticism of the state of affairs in Alberta,
So,
and a call to action to make
bro,
things better.
So that's just one of them. I think it shows the other one as well. This is a very good essay. I think it should have gotten one, or in the top 3 for sure.
It talks about access to quality of life, healthcare, food, housing, and even the opening line alone is powerful. Alberta is breaking, but we can come back together. It's up to my generation, young activists, people coming of age in a highly politicized world, and a generation with more access to information than any generation before us to bring us back together. It calls attention to the opioid crisis, the reactionary nature of the healthcare system, the toxic work culture, the need to tax the wealthy and fund social programs, and the need for Alberta to take care of its people. It's a terrific essay and you should really read it. The other one was written by a 17-year-old who is not identified. And she opens with the line, "As a 17-year-old politically engaged female, these days the question I ask myself is, why would I want to be an Alberta parliamentarian in such a toxic environment?" And it features some very pointed criticism. Again, pause to read.
Okay. Oh, that's even smaller. I can't even read that, my guy.
But it includes such lines as, "If you can't run and win on merit, strong sound policy, honesty, integrity, and ethics, you should be..."
For context, I honestly think that this should have been first place. This essay, like, I've read snippets of it, and it should have easily won first place.
Disqualified. Strong election reforms need to include criminal charges, not just fines. And it directly lays out a lot of the political machinations of the UCP over the last several years. She goes on to say, "What changes would I make as an Alberta parliamentary female should I choose to engage? Cleaning house would be the first on my agenda. That house would be the Alberta legislature for those misogynistic ones in the back. We can't make change until the environment allows us to. We need to create that environment even if it goes against the it's just politics, win at all costs, party over people, out-of-date ideology. To do better, we must start from the ground up."
I mean, I completely agree with that ideology, though. Like, we shouldn't just be putting fucking party over people. Like, it's just silly. It's how the fucking liberals and the fucking conservatives, and to a certain extent the NDP as well, fucking operate. Now, yes, the NDP does do some good work. I think that they don't go far enough, but I think it's a start at the very least.
That starts with the representatives of the people. These are two fantastic essays, and they really deserve a chance to be read. But the UCP decided that these were not deserving of the prizes. Who? Well, there were two judges. Jackie Armstrong Hominack, the UCP's Associate Minister for the Status of Women, and Jackie Lovely, the department's Parliamentary Secretary. That's who judged. Now,
Bro, what the fuck is going on with Jackies? They're crazy, man. I think automatically at this point, if you fucking run for office and your name is Jackie, you should not be elected. Bro, Jackies are fucking wild.
Armstrong Hominack said that the essay should have never been chosen, and Lovely apologized. But a reminder about that third essay. The first sentence was women have a unique strength, our ability to give birth. It talked about importing foreigners to replace ourselves, said that the first rule of health for any biological population is their ability to reproduce. It said things like women are not exactly equal to men, and discouraged women from trying to break into careers that men traditionally dominate. It even talked about giving medals to people who have 2+ children, which, if you know anything about the history of Germany in the 1940s, should be very upsetting to you. This essay beat out the two I just showed you. That's who those two MLAs chose.
And it's kind of disappointing that that did happen. So let's talk about the Trump raids now. The Trump raids were fucking awesome. So for those of you who don't know, Trump's Mar-a-Lago home was raided, and
federal investigators are
allegedly he had flushed down or like clogged toilets with like some documents that or he tried like flushing down stuff that was like down the toilet that had like that was very important, as well as like he was raided, like his safe was raided because he had nuclear codes allegedly, and who knows what fucking nefarious things he could have done with that. So it's crazy. Trump raids, let's go. You know there's an emote for let's go, right?
are now poring over those top secret documents taken from former President Donald Trump's Florida estate.
And the funny thing is, when these when this shit was popping off, conservatives were like, "Oh well, he declassified them." I'm like, "No, he didn't. He did he declassify them in his fucking head? Like, did he just say in his head he's fucking declassifying them? No, that's not a defense. Like, I'm actually kind of glad that fucking the Brandon administration is holding responsible for this."
Among the most alarming, a collection labeled top secret, sensitive, compartmented information. That's material that can only be viewed in a secure facility that blocks foreign eavesdropping.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that any past leaders of governments, they don't emote very often. You should emote more, my guy. Emotes are great. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that people that are not in position of power should be holding on to any form of documents or have like any power.
And where no cell phones are allowed. Why Trump took those documents is still unknown.
Donald Trump is a one-man crime wave.
What about the Hillary emails? What about Biden's laptop, brother?
Search warrant also said FBI agents were pursuing national defense information that reportedly included classified documents about nuclear weapons. Experts say Trump could face criminal charges, including...
I try to emote through my words of choice. I mean, the actual emotes do help too, though. Because it can sometimes be very hard to convey tone on what you're doing, so I think emotes help with that a little bit.
Violations of the U.S. Espionage Act.
It's a statute that has been used and prior criminal prosecutions of individuals who are in unlawful possession of classified information. And that's a pretty shocking thing to see.
The former president is reportedly worried someone in his inner circle betrayed him and informed the...
Look at this sexy man. How did he lose to the fucking corpse? Look at how sexy he is, man. Look at that face. You can't go wrong with that face.
The FBI. In social media posts, Trump called reports of nuclear weapons documents being seized a hoax and claimed all the documents had been declassified, which is untrue. But many Republicans are still rallying around the former president.
The funniest thing is that fucking hogs in America were trying to fucking, like, raid the FBI base, and it was the funniest shit. Like, no, you don't do that. If you want to attack America, I'm not giving any fucking advice here, but if you actually want to, like, do damage, I don't know, take over their fucking weak ass fucking infrastructure in the form of, say, like, electricity. I'm not giving any advice, though, just to be clear.
We cannot tolerate this in America, where
Oh, it's Marjorie Titan Green. Ew, gross.
our great institutions are welded and abused in such a way to defeat people's political enemies.
As some lawmakers publicly criticized the FBI for conducting the raid, the Bureau is taking steps to fortify its Washington headquarters, putting additional fencing and razor wire to protect its agents. That comes after a man opened fire on the FBI office in Cincinnati, Ohio, and was later shot and killed by law enforcement.
Bro, that's...
At least one Republican is denouncing the violence.
Bro, what the fuck? That's... I didn't actually know about that. That's fucking crazy. Bro, fucking American hogs are awesome. I kind of wish we had a little bit more of American hogs. It's fucking awesome. It's so much content, man.
I'm disgusted by the attacks on FBI agents.
Oh, gross. It's Dan Crenshaw. Blech.
Both the FBI and the Department of Justice are under intense scrutiny as some Republicans try to politicize the raid. The current FBI director, Christopher Wray, was actually appointed by Trump in 2017. And the attorney...
He's a traitor, brother. He's a traitor. He's turning on Trump.
Attorney General who signed off on the warrant is defending the agents who carried out the raid as patriotic public servants. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Let's watch this traitor's interview. Yay.
Good afternoon. Since I became Attorney General, I have made clear that the Department of Justice will speak through its court filings and its work. Just now, the Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week. That search was of premises located in Florida belonging to the former president. The department did not make any public statements on the day of the search. The former president publicly confirmed the search that evening, as is his right.
Bro, I love how many fucking hogs attack, like, everything that they don't like. It's so fucking awesome. Bro, I kind of wish that the fucking left could unite like this. It's kind of sad that we're being beat out by a bunch of dumbasses.
Copies of both the warrant and the FBI property receipt were provided on the day of the search to the...
So, for context, like, they did break into a safe and everything, and you have to have, like, a completely separate warrant and, like, probable cause that there is something very important in the safe. You can't just, like, which is why when, like, raids happen in, like, say, I don't know, your fucking, your grandma's house in, like, Alabama, they don't crack open the safe that she has in there. There has to be, like, a reasonable suspicion that there is important incriminating evidence within that safe. And it's like, you have to get approval for a judge as well for that.
Former president's counsel, who was on site during the search. The search warrant was authorized by a federal court upon the required finding of probable cause. The property receipt is a document that federal law requires law enforcement agents to leave with the property owner. The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter. Faithful adherence to the rule of law is the bedrock principle of the Justice Department and of our democracy. Upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor. Under my watch, that is precisely what the Justice Department is doing. All Americans are entitled to the even-handed application of the law, to due process of the law, and to the presumption of innocence. Much of our work is by necessity conducted out of the public eye. We do that to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans and to protect the integrity of our investigations. Federal law, long-standing department rules, and our ethical obligations prevent me from providing further details as to the basis of the search at this time. There are, however, certain points I want you to know. First, I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly. Where possible, it is standard practice to seek less intrusive means as an alternative to a search.
Why aren't you locking up Hillary, brother? You should be locking up Hillary. The emails, remember the emails? And fucking Hunter's laptop. He has drugs. He has pictures of him doing drugs and butt fucking people in Saudi Arabia. You need to lock them both up, brother.
And to narrowly scope any search that is undertaken. Third, let me address recent unfounded attacks on the professionalism of the FBI and Justice Department agents and prosecutors. I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked. The men and women...
Ever notice how, like, when fucking conservatives do this shit, it's like a big no-no, but like, and like they can essentially just get away with it too, but like, when it comes to, say, like, a fucking leftist, like, say, MLK, for example, they literally fucking assassinate them. That's kind of sus, if you ask me. One of these things is not like the other.
Women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated, patriotic public servants. Every day, they protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, and other threats to their safety, while safeguarding our civil rights. They do so at great personal sacrifice and risk to themselves. I am honored to work alongside them. This is all I can say right now. More information will be made available in the appropriate way and at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Well, we have to watch the second thought video on his opinions, which are right about the FBI. We should watch that sometime. We need to do like a second thought marathon at some point. I haven't been caught up with a lot of his stuff lately. He makes really good content too.
Former President Trump is saying on his own social media platform that his passports were among the documents.
Oh yeah, so I forgot his passports were fucking taken away from him, which is hilarious because, like, usually when that stuff happens, there's especially to like regular average Joes, it just means that, you know, there's a good chance you're gonna be going to jail. Like, I'm sorry, but if like Trump is harboring fucking if the allegations are true and that he's harboring fucking you know, fucking nuclear codes and shit, he should 100% go to jail. Like, I'm sorry, but like, someone else is gonna get that bussy before me, which is a little bit sad. Like, it's such a nice dumpy, man.
See,
that sounds like a self-report to me. What, that I want to slam his bussy?
Seized by the FBI. Mr. Trump not thrilled about it, as you can see here, but keep in mind that those passports.
Wow. In the raid of the FBI of Mar-a-Lago, they stole my 3 passports. 1 expired, along with everything else. This is an assault on a political opponent at a level never seen before in our country. Third world.
Passports were not on the list on the receipt for property.
Sure, if you want to take it that way. Bro, I mean, have you seen his dumpy? Like, have you seen his bussy? Like, there's no shot that you don't want to, like, slam that. Like, it is, he is caked up, my guy. Fucking caked up, man. Like, what the fuck does Biden have? Biden has absolutely fucking nothing. They just fucking, they just fucking unthaw him from the fucking, cryo chamber when they need him. I mean, at least they're letting him out to play a little bit more now, from what I've seen, which is awesome.
Unsealed by that affidavit last week.
No, I haven't, and I don't want to. Oh, you're missing out, man. You're missing out. He's fucking caked up.
You can see what was on that affidavit: 11 sets of classified, top secret, or other sensitive materials. NBC News has not been able to obviously confirm the claim that Mr. Trump is making one way or the other. But it comes as members of the House and Senate are hoping to learn
No, I think I'm good. I mean, suit yourself, man. You're missing out.
more about the whats and the whys of the search at Mar-a-Lago. Members of both parties have their requests out for various documents, but they're not all the same, right? There is a bipartisan push from the Senate Intelligence Committee, both Senator Mark Warner and Senator Marco Rubio, the top 2 members of that committee, calling to see the classified documents, or at least get access to them in a briefing. Democrats want a damage assessment formally. Republicans would like the DOJ, the FBI, and others to basically preserve communications related to the search. I want to bring in NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley, senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor on Capitol Hill, and
It's always so interesting watching fucking American news, man. Like, they always have a panel of, like, fucking 5 people on when it can be literally just be covered by, like, 1 or 2 people. Like, why the fuck do you need all these nobodies, man?
former FBI General Counsel and MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman. So, Ryan, let's bring us up to speed on a couple of things. First, any significance, and Andrew will talk to you about this too, about the idea that passports may have been taken, what that may say to you about where this case goes, and then what is next as it relates to this search at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, you know, I want to be careful about this one because that's something that we only hear from the president so far, and it could go a couple of different ways. But I think Andrew might be best to weigh in on the potential significance of that there. But it is significant. I mean, just, you know, as a fact that
They gotta make a big deal about everything. I mean, bro, when Trump's place in Mar-a-Lago was initially raided, fucking conservatives, like, on Fox News, and, like, fucking people like Ben Shapiro and fucking Steven Crowder were losing their shit, and it was the funniest thing ever. Oh, I loved it so much. Like, they unironically used, like, what about the fucking Hillary emails, and what about the fucking and what about the Hunter laptop, or the Hunter Biden laptop? Because, like, they're grasping at straws because they know that fucking Trump had some shit and it was not going to be good. It was so funny. I really wish I was able to do coverage of it last week.
this idea that the president's passports were taken by the FBI. I think there's obviously different interest on Capitol Hill in terms of getting more information about exactly the damage assessment and then the communication side. But I would just point out, you know, that this has been a very by-the-book investigation in terms of the FBI side. Remember that there was that initial meeting with Trump in early June after the subpoena in late May, and all of the while that information held. The fact that the former
What's next? Aliens? Yes. Yes, aliens is next. I mean, who doesn't like aliens, though? Like, aliens are fucking awesome. They have aliens at Area 51, brother. They're keeping it away from us. Why won't they let us in? They should let us in. We need to try and raid it again, brother. We need to raid Area 51 again. Naruto run in there. They won't catch us. Remember that? I fucking missed that. That was fucking great.
President of the United States was subpoenaed by a grand jury, held for several months. It was not leaked out of DOJ. It was not leaked out of the FBI. Apparently, the White House didn't even know about it. The White House was very taken aback by the developments last week. So there has been a pretty firm firewall, it seems like, thus far, that we've seen in between the Justice Department and the FBI, which is really, the Justice Department and the White House, which is really something that Merrick Garland, when he came in, wanted to reestablish and make sure that things were only going through the official lines of communication between the FBI, DOJ, and the White House, and not some of these sort of side missions that we saw happen during the Trump administration, Haley.
Bro, it was just the one guy talking.
We begin here this morning with that battle over that FBI seizure of documents from former President Trump's Florida home, with Trump now calling for the release of the unredacted affidavit behind the search.
The Justice Department is fighting to keep the affidavit under seal, saying that releasing it could jeopardize the ongoing criminal investigation that has potential implications for national security. Our senior national correspondent, Terry Moran, is in Washington with more for us. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Robin. This morning, former President Trump is battling back against the Justice Department. He is demanding that the department release to him and to the public the underlying evidence and justification for the search at his Mar-a-Lago residence. It is a hardball tactic in this high-stakes struggle. This morning, former President Donald Trump is calling for the immediate release of the completely unredacted affidavit behind last week's FBI search of his Florida residence. But the Department of Justice wants that affidavit, a sworn document that provides justification for a search and thus a possible roadmap to the case, to remain sealed to protect witnesses in its investigation into Donald Trump's alleged mishandling of classified information.
They certainly don't want to put former President Trump or anyone close to him on notice of what they are looking at.
The Justice Department argues that publishing the affidavit would reveal specific investigative techniques and could even compromise their investigation. That investigation is a criminal probe with national security implications. DOJ revealing it has witnesses cooperating in this investigation and indicating that a grand jury is involved. Now, some lawmakers are also demanding answers. The top Democrat and Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee have asked the Director of National Intelligence and the DOJ to provide the classified documents retrieved by the FBI, 11 sets in total, along with an assessment of potential risks to national security as a result of their mishandling at Mar-a-Lago. The Democratic chairs of the House Intelligence and Oversight Committees requested a similar assessment. Sources tell ABC...
Bro, he's way too excited. He's way too fucking horny to see what's in the fucking documents, man. I'm sorry, he's just way too excited.
News investigators are now scrubbing through security footage subpoenaed from Mar-a-Lago as they try to retrace the movements of these classified materials and determine whether the country's national secrets have been compromised. As a candidate, Donald Trump vowed to safeguard classified material.
In my administration, I'm going to enforce all laws concerning the protection of classified information.
Okay, but you literally fucking broke that, though.
No one will be above the law.
But
so that includes you too. Oh, if he goes to jail, I'm gonna feel so sorry for him, because his pussy will be clapped like day one.
Now, under investigation himself, he's changing his tune and his arguments. At first denouncing the raid as a political witch hunt, but then claiming that he had declassified the documents found at Mar-a-Lago anyway, some of which were marked SCI, that means from the most sensitive U.S. intelligence sources. Trump's also claiming that the FBI agents seized 3 of his passports during the raid. ABC News confirmed that's true, but all 3 have been returned and 2 were already expired. Amid attack...
2 of his fucking passports were expired. Who the fuck keeps, like, fucking old passports and shit? Like, why not just give them to the government to dispose of properly? What a guy. I don't trust the government, even though I was the government. I don't trust it.
Attacks on the FBI by Trump and other Republicans, there has been an increase in threats and acts of violence towards law enforcement, including a Pennsylvania man who was charged Monday for threatening law enforcement officials in the days after the Mar-a-Lago raid, writing in one post, "My only goal is to kill more of them before I drop."
Bro, Americans are psychotic, man. Like, what the fuck? he intended on fucking, like, killing a bunch of FBI agents? That doesn't sound great. If I remember, I would have loved to see the aftermath if they actually, of the raid, if they actually went through. Imagine all the bodies that would have been lying in the desert, decomposing and rotting. It would be a sight to behold, like watching if a safe distance and seeing people drop. Bro, what the fuck is going on with you, my guy? I mean, like, I don't doubt that, like, if the raid actually fucking happened, I don't doubt that that shit actually would have happened, though, because the thing is like the American, like, government does a whole bunch of, like, shit like this but like in like poor countries, and then they just like either ignore it and say that it's not true, or they're like, no, it was a necessary thing, it was for democracy in the region, which is kind of funny because America doesn't give a shit about democracy.
Meanwhile, in Georgia,
because look at Cuba, for example. They still have fucking massive embargoes on Cuba, as well as like trying to sow doubt in the Cuban government, despite the fact that in Cuba, the government approval rating there is 64% at least. I mentioned that I wanted to see the world burn in the past. You should not be surprised hearing this from me. I mean, yeah, I remember you saying that, so.
In an unrelated investigation into Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, their prosecutors in Fulton County have told Rudy Giuliani, Trump's lawyer in those battles, that he is a target of the investigation, which means it is possible
let's go.
Giuliani could be indicted. Robin?
That's fucking awesome. Giuliani too? Oh, this is awesome. This just gets better and better.
And Terry, the Trump's organization's longtime CFO, Alan Weissenberg, is due in court this week as well?
That's right, Robin. Alan Weisselberg was the chief financial officer of the Trump organization, and he is expected to plead guilty this week to a felony charge stemming from what prosecutors say was a tax scheme within the organization. Now, it's unclear whether or not Weisselberg will testify against Trump, cooperate with prosecutors. He's one of the closest business associates of Donald Trump for decades. Right now, it looks like he'll plead guilty this week. Robin?
All right, Terry, thank you.
That was loud.
New details this morning in the investigation
Let's watch some of the Communist News Network now.
into former President Trump's storage of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. We're learning the FBI interviewed his former top lawyers, Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin, earlier this year, after which the Justice Department noticed something alarming on subpoenaed Mar-a-Lago surveillance tape. CNN's Caitlin Polance joins us now with the latest on this. Caitlin?
Brianna, everything we are learning here is showing how the Justice Department arrived to the point where they felt it was absolutely necessary to go into Mar-a-Lago a week ago and seize documents that were being kept there. This new information now is filling out a little bit about how we got to that point. Our Evan Perez and Gabby Orr were able to confirm yesterday that Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin were interviewed by the FBI earlier this year. So Pat Cipollone, Pat Philbin, they were the two, they were both in the White House counsel's office. Cipollone was the White House counsel itself, and Philbin was a deputy to him. After the presidency, they became the liaisons for Donald Trump to the National Archives, dealing with his presidential records. And so whenever this was happening, this was around the time earlier this year where the investigation was really robust. There were a lot of things that investigators were doing. They were interviewing witnesses such as them. They were subpoenaing the documents to try and get them back. The New York Times has said that Philbin and Cipollone were trying to help get those documents retrieved received for the National Archives. We also know from the New York Times reporting, which first broke this story, that the Justice Department was subpoenaing surveillance footage, and on that surveillance footage at Mar-a-Lago saw something that concerned them that then precipitated this search ultimately this month. And all of this put together, all of this would be outlined in that secret affidavit that is in the court record that backed up the probable cause that the Justice Department needed to convince a judge that they should take this unusual step of going into the former president's home in Florida.
And about that affidavit, there's a hearing tomorrow about it, the precursor to the search warrant, and whether the public is going to see it. What can you tell us?
That's right.
Bro, this is I fucking love this story, man. It's such a great fucking story. Hogs are losing their shit. They think that America's a banana republic. It's just fucking awesome. I love this story. As well as, like, you have fucking conservatives being like, defund the FBI, and it's so fucking great. I love it so much.
Right. So this hearing tomorrow, it is before
Plus,
the
Trump
judge
might go to
that
jail
signed
too,
the
which
search
is
warrant, approved it. The judge
is
would
awesome.
have seen this affidavit before, and this hearing that we're going to have tomorrow in Florida, it is about secrecy. Right now, the media and others potentially have been asking to see this affidavit, as is our right to ask for. And the Justice Department is arguing very strongly that they can't let that out there because there are such sensitive details in there, such a sensitive ongoing investigation involving highly classified material that they do not want additional information out there. At this point in time, Donald Trump and his legal team, they have not seen this affidavit. It would have a narrative of a lot of the investigative steps taken. And this morning, tomorrow morning, we are waiting to see if Trump's team speaks up in court. And
it is all of Trump's pornos. Yes, that's what it is. He has all his fucking pornos. Look, can I have a link, man? I need to see this. I need to do it for research purposes, because, you know, I cover news. It's very important that I get my research.
says whether or not they want this to be released or not. Ultimately, it will be up to the judge.
All right, Caitlin, thank you for that new reporting. We appreciate it.
All right, with us now, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Elliot Williams and former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe. There's a hell of a quote from our friend Maggie Haberman in the New York Times in her reporting about Philbin and Cipollone being questioned by the Department of Justice. It says, quote, Mr.
That's classified, remember? Damn it. That makes me so sad. I'm so sad that it's classified. I don't have one. Bro, I'm sure if I go to 4chan, I can find it. Like, fucking everything I was on 4chan. Including, like, fucking, I don't know, CP. Because it's fucking 4chan. Fucking weird, fucking libertarian-ass motherfuckers.
Philbin tried to help the National Archives retrieve the material, two of the people familiar with the discussion said, but the former president repeatedly resisted and
Probably could find it on 4chan. I mean, bro, you can find, like, fucking almost anything on 4chan. I've never been on 4chan because, like, it's fucking toxic and, like, has a shit ton of Nazis on it. So, and fucking weirdos too. They're into some pretty sus shit. So I just flat out don't go on 4chan. I only go on, like, fucking leftist Reddit pages too.
treaties from his advisors, quote, it's not theirs, it's mine, several advisors say Mr. Trump told them.
So, you know, a couple things. One, John, there's this question of whether Cipollone and Philbin are in trouble based on their role in this. I've been asked that question before. No, these were the people standing between the president and some of his worst impulses. And this whole idea of they're not mine, you know, it's
I mean,
mine. So
all of his impulses are bad, though.
They're the American people's documents. Even if they'd been declassified, they're government documents that should have been stored properly in a different way other than at the president's private residence.
What does that tell you, though, in the issue of intent here? They're not theirs, they're mine.
Well, it tells you a lot, and any of us who've raised children have heard that same response in a number of contexts. It doesn't really.
You know, after fucking hearing even these dumbass libs laughing at the fucking hogs and whatnot, it just makes me think that fucking conservatives are even more fucking children. Like, it just makes me think that they have the mindset of like a fucking 7-year-old. I don't know, maybe 7-year-olds are pretty fucking smart compared to conservatives, though. I don't know about that one. They might be fucking younger, maybe like 5.
They indicate a high degree of understanding of the Presidential Records Act or property law, for that matter. But I think that's been clear from the very beginning. There is an intentionality here. The simple fact that these discussions began with the National Archives, continued for about 7 months, and in January, of course, the Trump team turned over a third of what they had to the National Archives, rather than going through everything. They gave over 15 boxes. We know that the FBI was able to recover an additional 33. So there is intentionality here in that sort, and that's something they'll have to explain.
We'll stick on that word intentionality here. It's not theirs, it's mine. That seems to preclude the possibility that these documents were there by accident. If he's saying they're mine,
that's right.
Right? Doesn't that put him in a different legal category potentially?
Right. No. You know, he's actually.
It's mine. You can't have it. It's mine. My boxes, my classified information. They're all mine.
Actually might believe that they are his and took them out of the White House, intending to take them out of the White House. The problem is, you've been a senior government official. I've been a senior government official. You are warned from the day you get in, multiple times throughout, and on the day you leave, that these are not your documents and you have to turn them over. And as a president, there's an additional layer under the Presidential Records Act. So this whole idea, look, we tried having unaccountable leaders in the United States for probably the first half of American history. It didn't work out well, and I think you're seeing some of that here.
Andy, how much insight? Sorry, go on. You were going to say something.
No, I just, I mean, I think we have to put it in the context of at least one of the many defenses we've heard so far, which was, oh, this is GSA's fault. It was all just thrown into the wrong boxes, and they took the things to Mar-a-Lago. I think that "it's mine" comment really undermines that defense.
How much insight, Andy, can they provide, knowing that they're steering away from stuff that attorney-client privilege, this issue has not been resolved yet? How much insight can they provide into how these documents were handled without going into some of that?
Well, that's going to be tough. Obviously, that'll bump up against what we've seen as a series of claims of privilege and all kinds of different issues regarding the former president and his staffers. However, the revelation, and I'm sure it was a revelation for the FBI agents who attended that meeting at Mar-a-Lago in June, that there was apparently surveillance coverage outside the room that would indicate who was having access to that room, how often people were going in there, what that traffic looked like. That became a very important point for them, and that would explain why they subpoenaed that coverage.
Let me read another quote from Maggie Haberman's reporting that deals with surveillance footage and the fact that they were alarmed with what they saw. At that point, at least one Trump lawyer signed a statement saying material with the classified markings had been returned, according to 4 people familiar with the document. But officials then used a subpoena to obtain surveillance footage of the hallway outside a storage room at Mar-a-Lago and saw something that alarmed them. They also received information from at least one witness who indicated that more material might remain at the residence. People familiar with the investigation.
Oh my Lord, it's like a law school exam question where you have to count all of the crimes. I'm dead serious here, because number one, signing that document could itself be a crime because it's a false.
Okay, that was actually kind of funny. I don't generally tend to laugh with liberals, but I tend to more laugh at them. But like, that's actually a little bit funny.
Statement. The government. Number two, not complying with the subpoena is itself, it's a misdemeanor, but it's still a crime. Number three, what you're seeing are potentially crimes, or at least gross abuses in judgment happening on camera. And this happens all the time when building investigations. They had evidence and testimony and a background of what was going on, and then were triggered by something they saw on camera that said, wait a second, something doesn't look right here.
All right, Elliot Williams, Andrew McCabe, great to see you both this morning. Thanks so much for coming in.
Oh shit. Didn't even realize. Hey, so I've been talking a little bit with a content creator that I follow. Just got back to me. It's fucking awesome. She's so nice, man. Gonna have to get back to her after stream.
Tonight, the legal fallout following the FBI search of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. The newly unsealed search warrant revealed the FBI was looking for documents connected to potential violations of statutes that make it illegal to destroy, conceal, or unlawfully remove government materials, as well as making it a crime to take national defense information under the Espionage Act.
Upholding the rule of law means
I should get back to her after stream. I mean, yeah, of course, I was going to. I enjoy her, the content she produces, and you know, after speaking to her for a little bit, she's definitely a sweetheart. I'll say that much.
applying the law evenly, without fear or favor.
We spoke to two legal experts on opposing sides of the political spectrum about any potential consequences the former president could face.
None, brother.
Laws range in penalty from 3 years to 10 years to 20 years to espionage. The one for retention of government property carries with it a disqualification.
I mean, like, if Trump was even in jail for, like, say 5 years, he'd fucking die because he wouldn't have his fucking Diet Coke. He wouldn't have access to it. He'd just fucking keel over and die within, like, the first 6 months, right?
From ever running for public office.
Is it in the national interest of the United States for the Justice Department to actually pursue a prison sentence against the former president?
And while an FBI search of a U.S. president's home is unprecedented, cases around classified information are not. There have been nearly a dozen of these investigations since 2005, like retired U.S. Army General David Petraeus and former National Security Advisor Sandy Berger. Neither faced prison time. Our experts agreed. The decision to charge comes down to the question of intent.
Basically, did this cross the line from a situation of carelessness to one of criminal intent?
I mean, he had fucking nuclear codes in his fucking suite at fucking Mar-a-Lago. If that isn't enough reason to fucking lock him up, like they should fucking... like they should with fucking Hillary Clinton, brother, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, I honestly don't think that he's going to, because it's fucking America. All he would have to do is watch our A Way Out streams, and then he'd be he wouldn't be in prison for long. True. We were very fucking efficient getting out of there, brother. And then we just kind of dick around at the fucking residence there.
This investigation differs from the one concerning Hillary.
But the main thing is that, like, those guys are actually, like, kind of, you know, fucking not fat and survive off a Diet Coke. So I don't even, like, I don't even know if he'd be able to survive for that long, though. Because he'd need so much fucking Diet Coke, brother. I don't even know how he would survive in there. Instead of his fucking currency being cigarettes, it'd be fucking Diet Coke.
Clinton's emails, which the Justice Department identified as careless, while former NSA contractor Reality Winner, who had just one classified document, was sentenced with prison time because she intentionally leaked the information to a news outlet, according to the Justice Department. Is there any justifiable reason why former President Trump would have classified top-secret documents in his possession still?
It's hard for me to understand a legitimate national security reason why the former president should have the documents he appears to have been holding at Mar-a-Lago.
It poses a...
I had to play music and horseshoes. Always horseshoes, and I still have a small itch to go back. Get a perfect score in horseshoes. Bro, you can't beat me in horseshoes.
Grave
You have me beat in the fucking music department, okay? But not the horseshoes. You can't beat my fucking horseshoes.
danger to the national security of America to reveal those documents. That's why they're classified at that level. So it's very serious.
Red Moore joins us from the White House. Former President Trump is insisting that everything was declassified, saying all the FBI had to do was ask. Does that, Maura, make a difference?
Yeah,
Jose,
right.
all
You
three
won't.
of the statutes
You
the
won't,
FBI
brother.
is investigating do not require that the material in question be classified. And legal experts say that argument probably wouldn't hold up in court. Even if it does, the documents are still government property, and it may have been illegal to remove them. Jose?
Thanks for watching. And any threats.
So let's. How long is this? 7 minutes. Let's watch fucking Trump's meltdown.
Made against law enforcement, including the men and women of the FBI, as with any law enforcement agency, are deplorable and dangerous. We have in this country had over the last few years an alarming rise in violence against law enforcement.
Turning to our special report tonight, that's FBI Director Chris Wray rebuking attacks on law enforcement. Wray was appointed by Trump, but is directly confronting how Trump, MAGA, and right-wing agitators are encouraging violence against police, including in response to the search of Trump's home. The FBI and DHS also issuing a very grave joint warning of a spike in threats to law enforcement, including from
Remember when the fucking January 6th insurrection happened and fucking 5 cops died and like almost no one was prosecuted outside of like figureheads? Remember that? Remember when that happened? Fucking 4 cops died on the scene and 1 fucking committed suicide. Remember when that happened? Like, I honestly don't think that, like, anything will fucking happen to these hogs.
Trump supporters who were seen carrying pistols and assault-type rifles at an air.
That's literally just every fucking America fucking... Like, that's just every fucking American, I don't know, fucking... barbecue. I don't know if fucking Americans like for fun.
Arizona FBI office, while that armed man wearing body armor was trying to breach the FBI's Cincinnati field office for an apparent attack Thursday.
Authorities in Ohio in a standoff with a man they say tried to break into the FBI's Cincinnati office.
A man armed with an AR-15 style rifle tried to breach an FBI office today. And now we're learning he had been at the Capitol on January 6th.
Today.
Bro, is anyone surprised? Of course fucking January 6th, rioters were gonna be doing this shit. Like, they're fucking 60-year-old, there's like 60-year-olds that are like on fucking retirement, or like they're, I don't know, fucking 40-year-old divorced dads who own the fucking business and don't have anything better to do because they're never at fucking work. Like, of course they're gonna be here. Like, they're fucking bored, man.
An armed man in Ohio allegedly attempted to breach an FBI field office, leading to a shootout where the suspect was killed.
The FBI is fortifying security at its headquarters in all field offices. Our cameras caught some of those preparations as this has gone forward. So this is a time for a sober reality check for the nation. Donald Trump attempted a coup and personally organized the gathering that turned into a violent insurrection.
It wasn't a coup, it was an insurrection. But, I mean, I guess these fucking libs don't really know the difference, so I'll let it slide.
To try to stop the peaceful transfer of power. Republican leaders have largely warmed to Trump's public, brazen embrace of illegal violence as a warning and a threat, and as a reality, practiced. Now Trump's out of power, and this court-supervised use of legal steps to protect national security is being met with open and new threats of violence against the FBI, against police, against judges. As domestic political terrorism has increased over the last 2 decades, there are about 2,700 open cases now. Then, we have something that is rife in our public debate. You have people who refer to this criminal violence as a potential reason to surrender, to appease these people, to hand some sort of veto over possible searches or indictments to the would-be thugs and criminals threatening or acting on armed rebellion. You don't need to be a history buff to know how appeasement fails. And then you might ask, what's next? Donald Trump invoking his vigilante army as an active threat against the government he once led?
Bro, he already did that, though. He already did that on January 6th. Like... he did it.
Well, that's what he just did, albeit in secret, according to a bombshell report in the New York Times, that Trump sent an ally who had apparently high-level access to the DOJ to pass along a message. Trump wanted Garland to know that he had been checking in with people around the country and found them to be enraged by the search. Well, the FBI is issuing warnings and bulletins about these people, these Trump fans enraged by the search, who are threatening violence and illegal retribution. So this is not exactly a news bulletin over at the FBI and DOJ. Let me be clear. Legally, this is outrageous. Donald Trump, the subject of a search, invoking those enraged people in what sounds like a threat. It's also improper for a subject to try to make these contacts to the top.
Oh, this is... who the fuck is this group again? He's a boogaloo boy. This guy's a boogaloo boy. He believes in fucking... He believes that fucking Civil War... A second Civil War is going to be coming on. The reason why I know this is because he's wearing a fucking Hawaiian shirt with a flag like this. Boogaloo boys are known for wearing fucking Hawaiian shirts, for those who don't know.
Of the AG, the Attorney General of the United States, even if the subject in this case is the former president, let alone issue these kind of threats. The report says Trump was suggesting he basically has leverage but could somehow reduce the threats, or by implication, not reduce them. The New York Times reporting the substance of Trump's message was, quote, "The country is on fire. What can I do to reduce the heat?" The idea there is that he's in control of the heat, he alone. A kind of creepy, threatening message for the Attorney General is how Washington Post's Jennifer Rubin put it.
Now I know what to look out for. I mean, a good rule of thumb is you should just be avoiding anyone who fucking wears Hawaiian shirts to begin with, if they're... provided they're not within Hawaii. It's like, who the fuck actually willingly wears fucking Hawaiian shirts? Like, for the most part, unless you're like not planning ahead in, you know, what you're gonna be wearing, like for outfit wise, they just look terrible. Because it's usually like in fucking khaki pants too. Like, you gotta at least have like some fucking color coordination with your fucking Hawaiian shirt if you plan on wearing a Hawaiian shirt. But yes, anyone who goes to a fucking protest in a Hawaiian shirt is a fucking boogaloo boy who, like, or who are on the same side as the fucking Proud Boys and shit.
Trump then rushed to sort of launder this move in public, telling a Fox News online reporter that he's out now to publicly do whatever he can to help the country. The temperature has to be brought down. You know that move if you follow the news. Donald Trump gets busted trying to do something in secret, so he rushes out in public, and then later people say, hey, he said it in public, how bad can it be? And the answer legally is very bad. This is not subtle. And no one thinks of Donald Trump as someone who brings down the temperature. That's not his thing. His most loyal supporters don't think that about him. None of this even claims to treat the probe as valid where evidence and facts determine the legal steps. Someone treating the probe as valid could have their lawyer call the AG to say, or the DOJ to say, we really are innocent, we want to cooperate, we think the facts will show that. Trump views this as an amoral battle of power, where his threats and leverage can be wielded. And in that sense, in Trump's mind, maybe he does see Garland as more scary, as a more intimidating adversary than he realized. So this is Trump's version of a rare, potentially conciliatory gesture in his mind. But it's wrong. Federal investigations are not some deal. They're not a battle between the subject and the prosecutor. And they certainly are never supposed to be subject to threats of violence. If they were, no gangster would ever be held accountable, and this would be an even more dangerous nation to live in.
What? What? Where the fuck did that come from? The funny thing is that when it comes to gangsters is that they're usually a part of the community and like trying to do something for their community. Bro, fucking American libs are wild, man. They sound like fucking conservatives here. The fuck? Oh my god, America is such a shithole, man.
This is ugly stuff. And there are people who'd rather look away and hope it just goes away.
You're one of them,
And they'd
apparently.
rather do that than confront the fact that our nation's most recent president is threatening a violent rebellion. But then again, wake up, America. He already did that once in public in 2021 just to try to keep a job he liked. If anyone...
He loved his job, brother. He's still doing his job. Biden's just a ploy. It's always a ploy.
One is surprised he's doing it in 2022 to keep his potential liberty, then you haven't been paying attention. And I promise you, this is a time to pay attention to the threats and the evidence and to face them down in whatever.
Like, if you remove the context on, like, what he's actually fucking saying, he sounds like your fucking crazy psychotic uncle that you try to avoid at fucking Thanksgiving or Christmas. He sounds like that guy. Like, just keeps fucking going on being like, wake up, you don't know what's going on in this country. But like, that's what he sounds like right now. He sounds like your crazy conspiracy theory uncle.
Whatever way you can in your life and role as a citizen, and to soberly back the rule of law, period.
Federal investigators are now poring over.
So, I would genuinely be surprised if Trump actually faced any fucking repercussions for the shit that he did. Time will tell. I don't think he will personally, because, you know, he's a fucking former president for one, as well as he's a fucking conservative in America. So he can essentially do what he wants.
Over those top secret documents taken from former President Donald Trump's Florida estate. Among the most alarming, a collection labeled top secret, sensitive, compartmented information. That's material that can only be viewed in a secure facility that blocks foreign eavesdropping and where no cell phones are allowed.
I think we watched this already. Dwarf goblins! Yo, that's fucking awesome. I love Alex Jones, man. Let's move on to some of the fucking parts.
Well, the FBI executed a search warrant and took a bunch of documents and things. But, yes, this is unprecedented in America. Yes, it could be the beginning of a criminal...
Gotta love crazies. I mean, bro, I fully agree with Hassan on this point. I honestly think Alex Jones is a fucking FBI plant. Just to, like, spew a bunch of nonsense and then, like, occasionally actually have a good fucking take and, you know, actually say something that's actually fucking true. And then the rest of it's just, like, nonsense your fucking psychotic uncle will say. Like, Alex Jones is fucking awesome. But I do think that he is a plant.
prosecution of the former president. Yes, it could be the tip of the spear of a political witch hunt by the Biden administration against a political rival. Or it could be a mundane effort to retrieve archival documents that leads to absolutely nothing else. We just don't know.
The FBI, and I give them a lot of credit because they're fighting forces that they're not supposed to be fighting.
But what do we know about the search warrant that was carried out against...
Gotta go sleep. I'll have the mental energy. Alright. Yeah, it's definitely been a long, hot day today. That's for sure.
Against former President Trump. We can't make many assumptions about the FBI raid until we see the actual warrant or until, we see an indictment. But here's what we do know. The Justice Department is conducting at least 2 investigations that we know of into Trump. The DOJ is looking at his attempt to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election and is also investigating the alleged mishandling of classified records. The National Archive is charged with collecting and sorting presidential material. The National Archives has publicly stated that it had to recover at least 15 boxes of White House records that Trump took to his Mar-a-Lago resort. The records include some classified material. And we know that Trump has a history of destroying and withholding records. He was repeatedly warned about destroying documents, but according to CNN, Politico, and the Washington Post, he tore them up and threw them in the trash or on the floor. White House officials...
Or he flushed them down the toilet too. There was that as well. As well as like a lot of fucking White House correspondents were not too happy that you just keep fucking ripping up documents too.
Reassembled some of those records with tape. The National Archives confirmed that the Trump administration sent the archives some documents that had been taped back together, as well as records that were still in shreds. I'll be doing a separate video on the Presidential Records Act and the implications of the Espionage Act, but multiple sources told CNN that in April and May, the FBI interviewed Trump's Mar-a-Lago aides. And in June of 2022, investigators visited Mar-a-Lago to discuss Trump's removal of potentially classified material that had been taken to the Florida property. One of those investigators, Jay Bratt, is the chief of the Counterintelligence and Export Control Section at the Justice Department. Trump reportedly greeted the investigators but did not answer questions. The investigators asked to see where the documents were being stored. Trump's lawyers showed them a room in the basement where boxes of records were being stored. Some reports said that the documents were marked with top secret. On June 8th, the investigators sent a letter to Trump's lawyers telling them to secure the room where the secret documents were stored. Trump aides complied with the request and added a padlock to the door. Now, I probably don't need to tell you just how insane it is that there could be top secret classified documents being stored in some basement in Mar-a-Lago, or just how insane it is that the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago potentially over these documents. But I do have to say that they even broke into my safe is probably going to go down as a quote for the ages. But the search began early Monday morning and apparently focused on the area of the club where Trump's offices and personal quarters are located. The investigators met with 2 of Trump's attorneys, and Trump reportedly greeted the investigators but did not answer questions. Investigators removed more than a dozen boxes of items. Eric Trump told Fox News that he was told, quote, the purpose of the raid, from what they said, was because the National Archives wanted to, corroborate whether or not Donald Trump had any documents in his possession. Trump's lawyer, Christina Todd, said the FBI seized documents and Trump cooperated with the FBI. Quote, President Trump and his legal team have been cooperative with the FBI and DOJ officials every step of the way. The FBI did conduct an unannounced raid and seized paper. Although Bob said that the raid was unannounced, CNN reported that the FBI and Secret Service communicated about the raid before it happened to ensure that it went smoothly. Donald Trump was in New York on the day of the raid, and the Biden administration was reportedly not aware of the raid, according to CNN. Now, we can assume this raid did not...
This is so fucking crazy, man. I still can't get over the fact that this actually fucking happened. It's great.
Happen at the behest of a rogue FBI agent or a local judge acting without buy-in or notification of high-level DOJ officials. Obviously, serving a warrant on a former president is an incredibly serious thing, and it's a decision that can't be taken lightly. The FBI and DOJ must follow constitutional and statutory requirements for obtaining a warrant, which we'll talk about in a moment. But in addition, the DOJ has guidelines for investigations of political targets. In 2020, former Attorney General William Barr issued a controversial memorandum stating that anyone in the Justice Department who was investigating a political candidate must run it by the Attorney General for approval. And current Attorney General Merrick Garland renewed that memo on May 25th, 2022. Garland's memo is titled Election Year Sensitivities. The memo reminded DOJ employees of the department's long-standing policy for avoiding steps that could be perceived as partisan and designed to influence an election result. Quote, this is particularly important in an election year. Now that the 2022 election season is upon us, and as in prior election cycles, I am using this memorandum to remind you of the department's existing policies with respect to political activities. Now, Barr's original memo says investigations, including preliminary ones, into presidential or vice presidential candidates, their campaigns, or staff cannot be opened without the written approval of the Attorney General. It also states that an investigation into a congressional candidate or campaign cannot be opened without first notifying the Assistant Attorney General and the respective U.S. Attorney in the district involved. And if an investigation is initiated in line with these guidelines, then the investigating agency has to provide regular updates to the Deputy Attorney General. Now, Trump has indicated that he will be a candidate for president in 2022. So the TLDR version here is the FBI would not have applied for a search warrant without Garland's consent, and presumably they also would have gotten approval from the Trump-appointed FBI Director, Christopher Wray. But what is the requirement for a federal search warrant? Well, a search warrant authorizes law enforcement to search a location for any of the following: evidence of a crime, contraband, fruits of crime, or other items illegally possessed, property designed for use, intended for use, or used in committing a crime, or a person to be arrested, or a person who was unlawfully restrained. Now, usually those first three are lumped together. Imagine a simple burglary where jewelry was stolen. You'd want to look at the burglar's house for the stolen jewelry, cash or drugs that might have been traded for the stolen jewelry, or burglary tools. And so law enforcement has to identify two different things. One, the person or property to be searched, and two, the items to be seized. Now, more to the point, law enforcement has to establish probable cause to believe that the items to be seized exist and will be located in the person or property to be identified.
I mean, wasn't there probable cause in order for them to, like, crack open his safe as well as raid his place? Like, why else would the FBI do so otherwise, right?
And probable cause is hard to define. It's imprecise, fluid, and very dependent on context. The U.S. Supreme Court says that finding whether probable cause exists is, quote, a practical common sense decision, whether given all the circumstances, there is a fair probability that contraband or evidence of a crime will be found in a particular place. And what does fair probability actually mean? Well, it doesn't have a specific number attached to it, unlike the standard of preponderance of the evidence, which is just a hair over 50% or more. That said, several studies over the decades that involve surveys of judges generally agree that probable cause is somewhere in the high 40s, but beneath 50%. And it might be worth noting that some jurisdictions like Oregon have collapsed the probable cause standard and the preponderance standard so that probable cause means anything over 50% likelihood. But that is not the federal or constitutional standard. The constitutional standard is only a fair probability. Now you might ask, how specific does a federal search warrant have to be? Well, generally speaking, not that specific.
Yeah, it can be fairly open-ended. Well, that they can essentially just get a fucking, like, a note written on, like, a fucking napkin to kick down, like, a black person's door and fucking raid their place.
We can look to the search warrant that was used against Paul Manafort. It includes something very specific, quote, a Bijon black titanium Royal Way watch. But it also includes general categories of items like any and all financial records for Paul Manafort Jr. Now, we'll get into what that means in practice later, but let's talk about the practice for getting a federal search warrant. Now, the applicant for a search warrant is generally a federal law enforcement officer of some kind, an FBI agent, a Treasury agent, etc. And as of 2016, federal agencies employed about 132,000 full-time law enforcement officers. And every federal search warrant is reviewed by an assistant U.S. attorney of some kind. Now, that's not required by law, but it's a policy decision by the Department of Justice. Now, the application itself is a one-page template, and federal law enforcement generally attaches 3 documents to that application. The first is the affidavit by the investigating officer. Attachment A includes the property to be searched, and Attachment B lists the items to be seized. Now, the affidavit is a sworn declaration by the law enforcement officer that sets forth the officer's knowledge of the investigation. It can include hearsay and even information from anonymous or confidential confidential sources, though the officer needs to establish the reliability of that information. The purpose of that affidavit is to establish probable cause to the reviewing magistrate. But the affidavit is all there is. The magistrate does not get to consider any additional information, just what's contained within the four corners of that document. Now, that said, the magistrate judge has to issue the warrant if there is probable cause. It's not optional. The judge does not have discretion to say, well, there is probably probable cause, but I don't think you need it for your investigation. It's looking pretty good on its own. Once the magistrate judge has found probable cause, the warrant must issue. And what this means in practice is that the magistrate judge signs the application, the one-page template, and issues it to another officer authorized to execute it. The warrant must be executed within 14 days.
So very basic, like, warrant stuff. Like, you know, he's just going into the more, like, nitty-gritty of it.
And during the daytime, unless there's good cause to execute it at some other time. And this should go without saying, but I'm gonna say it again anyway. Just because a judge signs off on it doesn't mean a crime has been committed. And just because you have received a federal search warrant doesn't mean that you are a criminal or have done really anything wrong. See contra all of the legal bad takes on Twitter. And as a reminder, just because a search warrant was executed on a particular person's property, that doesn't mean that particular person is the target of an investigation. Now, it is very common for that to be the case, but search warrants are frequently served on Google and Meta for information and data that they keep on their servers that are relevant to an investigation. They're not the target of that investigation. Now, and it's rare, but occasionally search warrants are executed on members of the media who have information or lawyers who represent the targets of an investigation. Nor does it mean there absolutely will be a prosecution. Just because there is probable cause doesn't mean that the government can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt in a jury trial. That's a completely separate consideration in light of all the evidence, including whatever evidence comes out as a result of the search warrant. The beyond a reasonable doubt standard is much, much higher than the probable cause or even the preponderance of the evidence standard. Though it's always good to remind people that just because you aren't convicted beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't mean you didn't commit a crime also. You know, so it goes both ways. Now,
Yep. This is a little bit boring, I'm not gonna lie. Move on to the Queen of Canada shit now. That's loud. That is really loud. Yeah, we'll start off with this one, I guess.
Here as the Queen and Commander-in-Chief to observe, to make sure whatever process is being done is done fairly, and whoever is arrested by the citizens is given respect, dignity.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, this fucking lunatic claims to be the Queen of Canada, and she thinks that the cops, and I think it was Mississauga, was doing like some very shady shit, and she encouraged her fucking followers to do some fucking, or to try and make a citizen's arrest against the fucking cops, which is hilarious. So.
And honor.
Very good.
So that's it?
Very good. And I'm here to make sure it goes over peacefully.
Correct, yes. And I have sent
Fucking,
message to the
they have worse audio than fucking leftists, man.
Sorry. 2 days ago.
Sorry.
I sent a message to the U.S. Commander-in-Chief 2 days ago, letting him know that I'm here and that I'll be here.
Right.
And that I requested for a backup to make sure this process goes peacefully for the week.
So that is Romana Didulo, the commander-in-chief of Canadian QAnon, I guess. An alien, as we'll get into. Someone who can personally communicate with Joe Biden to get backup, I guess.
What the fuck is going on? This is awesome. Like, all I heard is like she was going around trying, like, claiming she was the Queen of Canada, and like fucking getting her hog the followers to like try and arrest the cops. Oh, it was. It's so. This is wild, man. Now she's a fucking alien too. This is awesome.
And this story is already wild, but it gets wilder. You saw her there talking in that video about how the citizens are going to put people under citizens arrest. Specifically, they're going to arrest a bunch of cops. So when a bunch of QAnoners decide that they're gonna go arrest the cops, how do you think that's gonna go? Well, if you're a member of the group, oh, it's gonna be great. Everything's coming up QE. But no, they ended up getting kind of manhandled by the cops. So the actual footage, which is out there, I found to be a little bit rough. Maybe we can play a little bit of that. Yeah, you'll see.
The funniest thing, like I've actually seen like the footage before. We might show it, but it's really funny because like they initially all gathered outside of the fucking police station, and then the cops were getting a little bit fucking bored, so they went inside and then they like start coming in. One fucking woman was left outside, and they had to open the door to let her back in. It was so funny.
They continually say that they're gonna put them under arrest and then they get dragged down. The cops seem to have this thing about pulling their shirts off, which I found to be a little bit weird. But yeah, cops, whether in the US or in Canada, they don't be like when you give them a dirty look. When you try to place them under arrest, they're not going to play along with your little fantasies. But I want to give you more information about this individual because she is a character. Romana Didulo has built a sizable following out of the QAnon community by convincing people that she's the true leader of Canada and is waging a secret war against the supposed pedophilic cabal, as Marjorie Greene says, of globalist leaders like Trudeau or Joe Biden. She brought 30 of her followers to Ontario to do these.
I love the fact that all these fucking hogs in Canada are just want to be Americans. I say we should just fucking let America have them. Let's make a trade. These weirdos for your fucking nice people, man. I'm okay with that trade.
Citizens arrest over, well, what do you think? Like COVID mask mandates and stuff like that. So by the end of the day, one of her followers had been charged with 2 counts of assaulting police. A second was facing charges of mischief and resisting arrest. Charges of mischief are my favorite charges. They're by far the funniest. But anyway, they'd been super excited in the group for this, spreading memes and chatting about it and everything. She told her followers, of which she has 60,000 just on Telegram, who amongst you are prepared and ready to keep your city safe, peaceful, and secure after you've peacefully arrested Peterborough, Ontario police? Well, followers, some of them are being locked up. There's no sign yet that she's facing charges, but even if they do come for her, they're gonna have a hard time getting her because she has certain special powers. She claims she can become invisible by cloaking herself. I think she watched.
Yeah, I fucking heard this. This is like the wildest shit, and it's so funny. Oh man, how are they gonna find her if she cloaks herself, man? Oh, that's so funny.
Star Trek at some point. This power is not unusual for beings of her race, she says. She is not of this earth. She is a member of a highly advanced alien race, an Arcturian, an alien being with special celestial powers. Now, I searched for Arcturian on the internet because it sounded vaguely like one of the aliens from Star Trek Voyager, and it might be based on that. But no, there's a lot of videos and books about the Arcturians and their special technology and everything. She's just one of them, Jackson.
She's
what do
just
you
one
think
of
about
them.
the Queen of Q?
They're among us.
Oh man, I think many things. Well, first, the thing that really drew me in the article that we read for this, or one of them, the opening quote, it said, "People on a mission to arrest cops on behalf of self-proclaimed QAnon Queen of Canada ended up being violently arrested themselves." And it just, this woman she's nuts. I mean, she's just completely nuts. And one of the interesting things about this is, I was listening to some discussions, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the things he was pointing out, because he was talking about like flat earthers and stuff. And before, we lived in this age of technology, you might run into somebody who believed that the earth was flat like once every blue moon. But now all you gotta do is log on, and there they are by the thousands, by the millions.
The one thing that I don't like about the internet is that it gave an outlet for all these fucking weirdos to have their voices heard. Like, you know, the fucking anti-vaxxers, the fucking flat earthers, these fucking weirdos believing in this Queen of Canada nonsense. It's just it having the internet is a blessing and a curse at the same time, but it's also really funny watching these fucking nut jobs as well as like fucking with them online as well, because you can be completely anonymous online. They have no idea who you fucking are. And like, even if they do like try and threaten you and shit, it's even funnier when they like when you mess with them.
So she's got 60,000 followers because all these people can congregate due to search engines. So that's just one of the downsides of what we live in. But my favorite part was she said during one of her live streams that she had to go. And she was like, I have to go communicate with foreign allies. And it was like, no, the burrito you ate earlier was just hitting and you had to take a break real quick so you could step aside and do your thing real quick. But man, sure. I mean, you know, you try to arrest police officers, you're going to end up on the ground with your shirt off. They're going to sprinkle some dehumanization on you. And that's how this ends up.
Is that what we're calling it now?
Story.
Yeah, and where did they get that dehumanization powder? The Arcturians.
Of course.
Anyway, yeah, no, it's insane.
I don't know about you, but these Arcturians sound pretty fucking. They sound pretty fucking dumb, to be honest with you. Like, they may have all this fucking technology in the form of, like, say, cloaking devices or whatever the fuck, but they're pretty fucking dumb when it comes to, like, social cues and, like, and systems. Like, you know, you try to fucking arrest the cops and and you get arrested by the cops. That's fucking so fucking funny, man.
That this works. That there are people who believe literally anything. It makes me a little bit jealous. I kind of want to try it. Like, I want to see if I can start a cult. You know, just for the fun of it. I'm not gonna do anything bad. And she apparently has, and not just the citizen's arrest. Back in 2021, she was detained for allegedly encouraging her followers to shoot to kill anyone involved in vaccinating young people against COVID-19, adding that the traitors, TRADERS, the traitors, but spelled wrong, will face a military tribunal punishable by fire.
That's another fucking funny thing about conservatives, is that I honestly think they don't need to know how to spell. And it's the funniest thing. So what, we're gonna kill all the traitors? Then how the fuck is the economy gonna run, brother? Like, what? Oh man, it's so fucking wild. I love hogs so much, man.
Fire squad or hanging. Like, if you're gonna be like arguing that you want to put the traitors to death, you should know what the word actually is. Anyway,
Arcturian technology right there.
Arcturian technology. Maybe she means people who trade with a different alien species. I don't know. But anyway, it is amazing the following people can put together. She's got 60,000 followers. I've been reading about this guy. I'm sure everybody in the chat knows about this guy. Dude in Europe who's got like this following of hundreds of thousands of like hardcore, like pro-rape misogynists who's pulling in like.
Is he talking about Andrew Tate fans? Is that who he's talking about? He's like, that's the only like fucking European guy who I can actually see doing that is like Andrew Tate fans, because Andrew Tate's a fucking maniac.
Like huge amounts of money. I don't understand how these communities come together. Like what? Read a book.
Somebody in the chat.
I think they need to go outside and fucking touch grass a little bit more. Interact with someone, say hi to your neighbor, give them a hand with their garden. I think they need to do that a little bit more.
Said it would be sugar water. He remember from MIB, the giant cockroach. He came to Earth and he crashed. He was like sugar water. Oh man, hilarious, man.
Yeah. Anyway, like she's still out there. She's gonna come up with something else. If you're the secret leader of Canada, go to the presidential mansion, which I assume they have. Go do something presidency.
Not quite.
Prove it for once. Why would you have to be so secret? And that's why I've never understood this. The idea that like What's that?
Who needs proof?
Yeah, me. I'll join this. If she does a live stream where she fades away from view, I'll go arrest a cop with you, sure. But I want to see the technology first.
Right.
Prove it.
Exactly.
Anyway, maybe she is. Maybe she's right behind me, and I just don't know. Anyway,
The fourth dimension.
Exactly.
Never know, brother.
On the weekend, a group of people called on others to go and arrest the police, members of the Peterborough Police Department. But in the end, it was some of those protesters who were arrested. At Peterborough's police station, an ordinary Monday. What unfolded here on Saturday was not.
This is fucking awesome. I remember seeing the clips of this shit. Oh, it was so funny.
The weekly anti-government protest downtown took a twist after this woman, Romana Didulo, in the motorhome, called on people to arrest members of the local police.
They 100% believed that they could arrest the police, and I wouldn't be surprised if they tried again.
A group went to Peterborough Police headquarters, and some tried to carry out the wishes of a woman who calls herself the Queen of Canada. She's espoused anti-government, anti-vaccine views for months.
People really believe in what she says her followers do, to the point where they, quit paying their bills because she told them that they no longer have to pay them, and some are losing their homes.
Eventually, 2 of the protesters were arrested and held for a court appearance.
Wait.
Actually, 2 of the protesters.
I think this is a PPC flag here. This has to be a PPC flag, right?
Were arrested and held for a court appearance.
Not good. Not good.
Many in Peterborough have grown tired of the protests.
Stupid.
But arresting the police is something new.
The obstruction.
It's something new, but at least at least the hogs are having a little bit of fun. Like, this looks hella fun, not gonna lie. Kind of jealous, actually.
Potentially of the police movement throughout the police department is likely what caused the issue.
It's either insanity or it's treason.
But this University of Pittsburgh professor says this kind of government effort must be taken seriously.
Oh my god, look at this fucking Karen. Oh, that's awesome. Bro, this is fucking awesome. Why can't we get more of this? I really love watching Karens, in this situation. It's fucking awesome, man.
Seriously, even if it appears on the fringes.
They want to replace it with some creation of their own. And I don't think we should ignore people who are making steps or strides to actually carry out these ideas.
This story is still developing. Just a little over an hour ago, the Peterborough police chief put out a video statement. They've now arrested a third suspect, a 31-year-old man, charged with 3 charges in connection with what happened at the police station on the weekend, adding to 2 other men who are charged. They're in their 50s, plus the Ontario Special Investigations Unit. They're investigating because of injuries that were sustained by one of the people who was arrested. So police asking for videos, asking for more evidence. There will likely be more charges, and there may be more situations like what we saw here in Peterborough on the weekend. Stay tuned. Tracy?
All right, Sean, thank you for staying on top.
Okay, let's move on to the fucking video of the fucking hogs outside of the Petersburg police station. It's fucking awesome. I don't know if they'll show like everything, and I don't know if I can show everything either. I should just double check for TOS. They look like any TOS. I think I should be okay. Bro, there are so many hogs. She has to be a fucking a PPC voter, right? There's no shot that she isn't. Meet and greet Her Majesty Queen Romania, Commander-in-Chief of the Kingdom of Canada. Yeet yeet. Romana. He's being a creeper, brother. Oh, I see now why they were trying to arrest the cops. They're all creepers, brother. Oh, here come the other hogs. Come on, bro. Where's the fucking content? You're so boring, Karen. Okay, now things are starting to heat up. They're saying that they're injecting people with poison. This is starting to get good. Bro, look at this fucking guy. He's here on this fucking, I don't know what this is. Looks like a fucking huge ass scooter for his fat ass. And he's wearing a fucking helmet. Like, what a loser. Who wears a helmet? Like, unless you're fucking like going dirt biking or like or you own a motorcycle. Like, who the fuck wears a helmet for a scooter, man? What a weirdo. No wonder why these guys are such big losers, man. Help you with what? What are they gonna be helping you with? What, arresting people for who got fucking vaccinated? Like what? Oh, this is fucking awesome. Even the cops are laughing at them. Oh, I usually fucking hate cops, but this is fucking awesome, man. Bro, come on.
Yeah, it's somebody up there.
Oh, here they come.
Are you gonna answer me? Have you heard anything we've said? Do you have to have? Don't you have that permission? You do. You look old enough. Hey, Mark.
Let's go, Mark. Oh, they're bringing the dogs out. Let's go, baby. Oh, things got really heated. They're taking the dogs out for a walk. Oh, this is crazy, man. They got a canine out. Look at how many fucking thumbs there are, man. There's so many of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 thumbs. They're fucked. That's like 1.5 thumbs for every single person that's there. A cute doggo. One of them was trying to fucking fly a drone too. Oh, this is, bro, this is fucking awesome. I wish I could find the fucking other video. I don't remember where I saw it, but there was another video of, like, you know, these dipshits getting like arrested and shit. And then there was also one where, you know, they got kind of fucking bored of these hogs and decided to go in, and then they started to move in, and the one hog was left outside. Oh, it was so funny, man. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Walk away, Karen. Go to Starbucks and complain to the manager that you're not able to get your fucking cappuccino in like 10 seconds. You know, the more I look at this guy, the more I think he's just confused on why he's here. He doesn't even, he looks like he doesn't even know what's going on, man. Bro, it's like all fucking boomers and shit too. They saw like the one Facebook post of the fucking Queen of Canada, and it's like, you know what? I'm fucking bored. I can't. I'm on retirement. I don't have nothing better to do. I'm just gonna go fucking bother the police. You have like fucking bystanders filming. Oh, it's so funny, man. Oh shit! They're bringing out the big guns. Literally.
How would other people like to know?
No captions. Damn. This guy must think he's so cool with his hat to the side. Oh man, I didn't realize that we were in fucking like high school. I think your time has passed, my guy. It's time to move on. I was kind of confused on what was going on here with this guy's legs, and then I realized he has fucking no legs, so you need to get some legs. That makes me kind of sad a little bit. At least I think he doesn't have, or at least I think he lost both of his legs at some point. It looks like it.
Hey, Joanne. You got one? You're a psychotic buddy in the back got one?
Oh man, he's such a big man. Look, he's trying to fucking hit on all the 40-year-olds. What a mad lad. Come on, bro. There has to be something better you could be doing with your life, right? Bro, his face. Oh, that's fucking awesome. It fucking looks like that. Oh, it's so funny. Bro, he's going back. He's so fucking bored. He needs to find a new hobby. They're coming out again. Is he still up there? Bro, what a guy. He's still up there. Yeah, let's get to the good shit. Who's the guy that got arrested? Who got arrested? Bro, that's lame. Lame.
Listening to a Frequency Podcast Network production in association with City News.
I don't feel like watching that. So let's watch the Alex Jones verdict shit.
Goblins. I mean, she literally looks like a goblin. I'm just telling you, and acts like a goblin.
Just because you claim to think something is true does not make it true.
The jury awards almost 50 million.
Oh yeah, the funny thing is, when it came to the fucking Alex Jones thing, like I've sort of been keeping up with the Alex Jones trial, and it was like fucking wild. I think he called the fucking judge like a pedo or something. The guy, this Alex Jones has so much fucking content, and it's awesome.
$1 in damages against Alex Jones and his companies for defaming the parents of children killed in the Sandy Hook massacre. After years of being targeted by Alex Jones, the parents finally had their chance to address Jones to his face in court, and things did not go well for Jones. Just how bad was it? So bad that former prosecutor Mitchell Epner said, "In over 25 years as a trial lawyer, I have never seen a witness do more damage to himself on the stand than Alex Jones, and that includes a case where I was AUSA, where I got a defendant to admit that he was guilty of the crime charged in the indictment. It was so bad that also former prosecutor Ken White said it was like an action movie where it's not enough that the bad guy gets shot or stabbed at the end, he's got to be like decapitated and exploded and impaled at the same time. But let's start at the beginning. Why was Alex Jones on trial? In 2012, a lone gunman murdered 6 adults and 20 children at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut.
Which is sad.
Alex Jones and his associate Alan Schroyer and Wolfgang Helbig said that the event was a hoax that did not happen.
The whole thing is a giant hoax.
The Jones gang accused the bereaved family members of being, quote, crisis actors.
And it just shows how bold they are, that they clearly used actors.
And Jones and his correspondents repeated those claims on InfoWars broadcast.
Okay, so just another question that people are now going to be asking about Sandy Hook.
Alex Jones's fans harassed the parents online and at their homes. And after several years of this, some of the Sandy Hook families sued Jones for defamation in Connecticut and Texas. During his deposition in one of the other Sandy Hook cases, lawyers played clips of Jones mocking the parents and calling their tears bad acting.
The only problem is I've watched a lot of soap operas, and I've seen actors before. And I know when I'm watching a movie, I know when I'm watching something real.
And in response to those clips, Jones admitted under oath that he knew his statements were false. After his deposition, Jones and InfoWars denied having emails, text messages, and other material about the Sandy Hook clip.
And then his idiot lawyer leaked the entire thing to the court on accident, and it was the funniest shit that happened.
Claims. Jones and his lawyers then ignored court orders to produce documents in Texas and Connecticut. And spoiler alert, during the damages trial, we found out that they lied about having this material when one of his lawyers accidentally sent Jones's entire cell phone.
This is a face of someone who has lost everything, and it is so fucking funny. Oh, I love the Alex Jones case, man.
And a whole bunch of other documents to opposing counsel.
Your attorney's messed up and sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years.
And Jones has a whole pattern of disregarding discovery obligations in other cases as well. And some people have claimed that Jones has gotten railroaded by having liability conceded by default, and that Jones's constitutional rights have been infringed. That is not the case here. It was a strategic choice by Jones and his attorney to not turn documents over, all the while claiming that they never possessed relevant documents and that those documents didn't exist. We know now that that is not the case, that it was a strategic choice to hold those documents back, never turn them over, and then face the repercussions in court, which is what they basically have done, and why liability was conceded.
But I'm not going to seal the entire quantity of information without knowing what's in it when the rules weren't followed properly.
And taking all of that into consideration, the judges in all 10 Sandy Hook cases entered default judgments against Jones and his companies. A default judgment happens when the defendant in a civil case fails to do something such as ignoring a court summons, missing a court date, or disregarding the judge's direct orders. And if this occurs, a court may rule in favor of the plaintiff by default. And this is very rare. A default judgment is the most serious sanction a judge can impose during a civil trial. Judges do not enter default judgments very often. But
I mean, like, of course it would happen to Alex Jones, though, because Alex Jones is a mad lad.
if you want to learn more about why the default judgments were entered against Jones, check out my video on the topic. I have an entire video on the pre-damages portion of this trial. But this particular case that we're talking about today is the first of 3 upcoming trials that will decide how much money Jones and his companies must pay in damages. It was filed by Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, who are the parents of 6-year-old Jesse Lewis, who was killed at Sandy Hook. And since the default judgments were issued, Jones couldn't contest liability. The trial was only about how much Jones must pay, and the plaintiffs sought $150 million in compensatory and punitive damages. So what did the plaintiffs say during trial? Well, Neil Heslin was the first plaintiff to testify.
I can't even describe the last 9.5 years of the living hell that I and others have had to endure because of the negligence and the recklessness of Alex Jones.
He and Lewis said,
like, I honestly feel awful that the parents of the Sandy Hook massacre had to go through all this. Like, there's no reason that they should have to go through all this. Like, it's just wild to me that, you know, that it was that was happening to them. It's kind of sad.
Said that strangers have confronted them everywhere, including at their homes. Heslin's house and car have been shot by people yelling out Alex Jones.
Somebody drove by my home, shouting out the window, Alex Jones, and sounded like gunfire coming from the vehicle.
Heslin gave heart-wrenching testimony about holding his son and seeing that he had a bullet hole through his head. Owen Schroyer went on Jones's program and said that Heslin lied about holding his son's body.
I think it's time for you to explain this contradiction in the narrative.
And this is apparently what prompted Heslin and Lewis to fight back.
Alex started this fight, and I'll finish this fight.
Now, Jones wasn't in court to hear Heslin's testimony about Jesse. It's not necessary to show up to court, but usually you do want to do that. Instead, while Heslin testified, Jones did a live show where he called Heslin slow and autistic and accused him of being manipulated by lawyers.
But I'll just say, because I gotta be honest, he's slow, okay?
This was...
And it was so fucking funny that he did this. He got so much shit for this. He also opened the live stream up with like the fucking judge and the fucking lawyer with fire and like I think like eating babies or some shit like that. It was so fucking wild. Oh man, I fucking this case was just awesome, man.
Not a good strategy, because this clip was then played in court for the jury just a few days later.
I mean, I think Heslin acts like somebody on the spectrum.
It supported one of the plaintiff's key claims that Jones has spent years ridiculing the Sandy Hook parents and that he can't control himself or his employees who continue to harass the families. Now, after court, Heslin and Jones had a confrontation where Jones again called Heslin a slow person who's being manipulated by lawyers. Jones also ripped the judge on his InfoWars program.
And they're all caricatures of what you would imagine in some alternate universe of dwarf goblins. It's demonic. They all act demonically possessed. The judge, the lawyers.
Now, part of our job as lawyers is client control. We tell our clients not to talk about their cases in public. Don't post to Facebook. Don't share things in the media. Don't talk with friends and family. But ultimately, though, it's up to the client to demonstrate some self-control.
Judge Goblin here in Austin, I mean, she literally looks like a goblin, I'm just telling you, and acts like a goblin.
Even the greatest lawyers in history would probably be powerless to stop Jones from, being himself. And then there was the testimony of plaintiff Scarlett Lewis. Jones was again not in court for the first half of Scarlett Lewis's testimony. When he finally arrived, he was accompanied by a team of bodyguards. Lewis addressed her testimony directly to Jones while he sat at the defense table.
I am a mother, first and foremost, and I know that you're a father. And my son existed. I know you believe me. And yet you're gonna leave this courthouse and you're gonna say it again on your show.
At one point, Lewis directly asked Jones,
You think I'm an actress?
No, I don't think you're an
No,
actress.
you can't talk right now.
Sorry.
Now, Lewis told Jones that he makes claims about the massacre that he knows are lies.
But when you say those things, there's a fringe of society that believe you, that are actually dangerous.
And Lewis emphasized the deep trauma that she has because of Jones and his followers.
It seems so incredible to me that we have to do this. That we have to implore you, not just implore you, punish you, to get you to stop lying.
A forensic psychologist who met Heslin and Lewis said both suffer from a form of post-traumatic stress disorder that comes from constant trauma. Jones's lawyer, Reynald, had a tough time handling these witnesses on cross-examination because it would be incredibly hard to cross-examine these witnesses. At one point, he suggested that it would be more healing for Lewis and Heslin to sit down and talk through their trauma with Alex Jones than it would to file a lawsuit. On cross-examination, Jones's lawyer grilled Lewis about her finances, noting her book contract and speaking engagements.
Can you tell the members of the jury how much is this suggested honorarium for your speaking engagement?
It may be $5,000.
Would 10 be more accurate?
It could be 10.
And he said that she makes more than enough to pay for her own therapy. Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this questioning probably did not go over particularly well with the jury. And then there's this testimony of Alex Jones himself. When he took the stand, he told plaintiffs that he's always wanted to apologize.
That I never intentionally tried to hurt you. I never even said your name until this case came to court. I didn't even really know who you were until a couple years ago when all this started up. The internet had a lot of questions. I had questions.
Jones argued that he made a few inquiries about whether Sandy Hook was a false flag operation, and then the mainstream media reported on what he said and turned everything into a circus. The media, Jones said, created an atmosphere where nobody knew what the facts were, so there was no real way for him to get it right. Jones and his lawyer argued that the Sandy Hook parents were victimized 4 times, by the shooter, by truthers, by politicians, and by everyone else who took their grief and weaponized it. In other words,
and then he did so as well. He also weaponized it as well.
It wasn't his fault. Now, on cross-examination, Jones also admitted that he basically called every major event of the last decade a false flag incident engineered by the government. Now, the judge was not pleased by any of this. You've probably seen the incendiary clips of the judge telling Jones to stop lying under oath.
You're already under oath to tell the truth. You've already violated that oath twice today.
Now, the judge admonished Jones for a number of different things.
Yeah, it was so fucking funny. Because he tried speaking up and everything. She yells at him, "Don't talk when I'm talking." It was so funny.
The first was telling the jury that he was bankrupt. Jones repeatedly testified that he only makes money selling prepackaged prepper food for
brain
like
pills.
An apocalypse. Everything else was money losing, he claimed. But plaintiffs had already shown that InfoWars was making a lot of money, as much as $800,000 a day during certain events. And one of his employees...
Yeah, and like that's the crazy thing to me. Is like $800,000 a day is ridiculous how much fucking money he makes, man.
He's testified that the company makes about $50 million annually.
That's what the document says.
Though faced with 3 upcoming trials, Jones and his companies have started bankruptcy proceedings. Now, when a company files for Chapter 11 protection, it tends to stay the other legal proceedings. Jones has many LLCs, but the biggest company is Free Speech Systems. Free Speech Systems filed for bankruptcy in Texas, so Jones's lawyer moved to stay the Connecticut proceedings, which is a different case. But this was the second delay in the Connecticut case because of bankruptcy maneuvers. Back in April, InfoWars and 2 of its subsidiaries, InfoWars Health LLC and Prison Planet LLC, also filed for bankruptcy protection. Now, these entities were removed as named defendants so that the damages proceeding could move forward. Now, Free Speech Systems listed $14.3 million in assets, including over $1 million in cash and almost $1.6 million in property and equipment. However, the petition claimed the company had $79 million in liabilities, including a $54 million debt owed to something called PQPR Holdings. Now, who owns PQPR Holdings? Well, it's Carol Jones and David Jones, also known as Alex Jones's mom and dad. Now, the Sandy Hook plaintiffs believe the bankruptcy proceedings...
Bro, could you just imagine your mom and dad owning fucking companies that you work for? That's wild to me. Especially at like fucking, I don't know, 49 or whatever, however the fuck Alex Jones is.
Are a sham. Heslin, Posner, and 2 other Sandy Hook families filed separate lawsuits accusing Jones of hiding millions of dollars in assets. The plaintiff said the $54 million debt was dubious since PQPR is a Nevada-registered company that is owned by shell entities owned by Jones's kids and parents. There's substantial evidence of fraudulent transfers, and it's not even clear that the bankruptcy court would discharge the Sandy Hook judgments anyway. So while Jones may delay, it's likely to be a Pyrrhic victory. And going back to what Jones was admonished for during the trial, Jones told the jury that he had complied with the court's discovery orders, which is absolutely false. Now, during discovery, plaintiffs asked for a number of different things, but they specifically asked Jones to identify the number of videos he produced about Sandy Hook. Jones and his co-defendants refused to produce this material, which is one of the reasons for the default judgment. And the plaintiffs' lawyers generally had a pretty easy time showing that Alex Jones was lying about the stuff that was actually produced.
Mr. Raynaud had told the jury that there was 29 minutes total of InfoWars videos. He played 51 minutes in a single video, so we know that's not true. He has routinely, every single day of this trial, broken rules that a first-year lawyer knows. He has routinely placed inadmissible material in front of the jury. It is from our perspective at this table that Mr. Raynaud is actively trying for a mistrial.
And the judge told Alex Jones's lawyer to stop many different times.
I am very upset that...
Oh yeah, I think he's gonna show the clips of like the judge telling Alex Jones to shut up.
You have tried to imply to the jury that we know how many videos about Sandy Hook were released by your clients, when we don't, because they refused to respond to discovery. So I do not want you to do that again. And and I don't want you to argue with me about it. That is the rule of this case. That's it. They didn't respond. We don't know. We've had multiple conversations.
Come on,
and how I know
show the clip of her telling him to shut up.
You know what the rules are, but you've chosen not to follow them on occasion.
And despite the judge's very clear instructions on the number of videos, Reynal interrupted the judge to argue.
The number of videos, their length, this is evidence that is being adduced in the courtroom.
But what you said was not, we've shown the jury 29 minutes of clips where the word Sandy Hook appears or anything like that. It was, they released in total 29 minutes. That is not true.
But the judge made it extraordinarily clear to Alex Jones what he could and could not do.
You may not say to this jury that you complied with discovery. That is not true. You may not say it again. You may not tell this jury that you are bankrupt. That is also not true. You're already under oath to tell the truth. You've already violated that oath twice today in just those two examples. It seems absurd to instruct you again that you must tell the truth while you testify, yet here I am. You must tell the truth while you testify. This is not your show.
I mean, he seems to think that it is, and that was the funniest part of this trial.
You need to slow down and not take what you see as opportunities to further the message you're wanting to further, and instead only answer the specific and exact question you have been asked.
Now, what makes all of these exchanges particularly remarkable is that Jones's lawyer, Reynal, probably knew that there was a ticking time bomb that disproved Jones's claims about discovery. A ticking time bomb was that Jones's lawyer had accidentally sent 300 gigabytes of unredacted information directly to plaintiff's counsel, and that included Jones's entire cell phone backup. And sure enough, on cross-examination, plaintiff's lawyer Bankston reminded Jones that he claimed to have searched for messages related to Sandy Hook on his phone. Jones said yes, that he did the search, but found nothing.
So you did get my text messages, and it said you didn't. Nice trick.
And that led to the Perry Mason moment where Bankston absolutely skewered Jones on cross-examination by pointing out that these documents did exist in the form of text messages and emails that mentioned Sandy Hook. And the reason that Bankston knew that they existed is because Jones's lawyer accidentally sent him the entire cell phone.
I told you the truth. This is your Perry Mason moment.
Yeah, that's quite the exchange. And in fact, I have an entire video covering both this Perry Mason moment and the equally interesting hearing that was held the next day where the defense counsel moved for mistrial. And that also did not go well for Alex Jones. But since liability was already conceded, it didn't really take the jury very long to award damages to the plaintiffs. The jury found that Alex Jones should pay $4.1 million in compensatory damages for repeatedly claiming the school shooting was a hoax. Now, a court awards compensatory damages to put the plaintiff in the situation that they would have been had the harm not occurred. Now, compensatory damages include both economic and non-economic damages such as medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, mental impairment, and emotional distress. Heslin and Lewis were seeking $150 million from Jones, but the jury's verdict fell pretty far short of that mark. Jones's lawyer, Reynal, asked jurors to award a total of $8, $1 for each of the 8 harms the defendants inflicted on Heslin and Lewis. Of course, he couldn't ask for nothing because liability was conceded. Now, the jury's verdict was not unanimous. 2 of the jurors did not sign the form. In Texas, a civil jury verdict does not have to be unanimous. But that takes us to the punitive damages, or as Texas calls them, exemplary damages. Now, a court will award exemplary damages in Texas to punish the wrongdoer for their particularly bad behavior. Exemplary damages are also meant to deter people who might act like the defendant in the future. So in other words, Texas exemplary damages are meant to penalize the defendant for their behavior and to warn others not to do the same thing. And under section 41.003 of the Texas Code of Practice and Remedies, exemplary damages are awarded to a plaintiff if they prove with clear and convincing evidence that their harm resulted from fraud, malice, or gross negligence. But exemplary damages may only be awarded if the decision is unanimous. This, in combination with the clear and convincing evidence standard, makes it difficult to recover exemplary damages in personal injury cases in Texas. But there's another wrinkle, because in Texas, there's a statutory cap on punitive damages in personal injury cases. An award of exemplary damages may not exceed an amount equal to the greater of 2 times the economic damages plus an amount equal to any non-economic damages found by the jury not to exceed $750,000 or $200,000. And another subsection prohibits telling the jury about this particular cap. Now, the reason the juries are not instructed is that it might influence their thinking. They might shift punitive damages into the compensatory damages. So it's entirely possible that the jury can come up with a much bigger amount than the statute allows. And if a jury returns an award that is higher than the statutory cap, then the judge just simply reduces the amount. And in closing arguments, the plaintiff's attorney argued that this was the jury's ability to send a message to, quote, stop Alex Jones, stop the monetization of misinformation of lies. The defense argued that Jones had only...
I mean, like, even with the outcomes of the Alex Jones case, like, it doesn't matter. People are still gonna spread misinformation and shit. So
only spent 8
conservatives are just gonna use it for, like, you know, like, look, they're attacking our brave soldiers.
18 hours and 43 minutes talking about Sandy Hook, and that they only made about $14,000 per hour during the coverage, and that should form the basis of the award. And following closing arguments, the jury returned a verdict of $45 million in punitive damages. But given the statutory limits that we just talked about, it's likely that the punitive damages award is likely to get chopped down to well less than $1 million. But that raises the question,
which is crazy to me. Like, he has a fuck ton of money, and, like, he's not gonna be fucking charged for the amount that was given. Like, it's just crazy to me.
Next for Alex Jones? Well, the answer is more trials. On September 14th, the Posner and De La Rosa plaintiffs will face Jones in a Texas courtroom. In addition, Jones may find himself in deeper trouble with the January 6th committee, which wants to see...
Yo, okay, we have to fucking watch that. We have to watch it. I haven't really been keeping up with the January 6th committee, but I've been hearing it's been kind of wild. Well, we'll have to watch it, man.
All of the information that was on his cell phone, which was turned over to the plaintiff's attorneys. Jones took the Fifth Amendment 100 times during his testimony to the January 6th committee. And in this trial, Judge Gamble said she would not enter an order stopping Bankston, the plaintiff's attorney, from giving the material to the January 6th committee.
I mean, I don't know that you get to stop that anyway.
Additionally, Jones's lawyers are in hot water. Reynal is facing potential discipline by the Connecticut bar. On the same day that the Texas jury handed down the verdict, a judge ordered Reynal and Jones's lawyer Norm Pattis to attend a hearing about whether they should be referred to disciplinary authorities or sanctioned by the court directly for releasing confidential medical records in violation of state and federal law and contra the court's protective order. And although Jones told the jury that any verdict over $2 million will sink us, after the verdict, Jones's lawyer assured reporters that the verdict meant Jones would continue to be on the air, presumably profitably for the foreseeable future. Now, the other thing that could be next for Alex Jones is a perjury conviction. Many people have pointed out that it sure seems like Jones obviously lied on the stand, aka perjury. And to find out about the law of perjury and Jones's chances of conviction, you'll have to head over to today's sponsor, Nebula and Curiosity Stream. On Nebula, my videos always...
Bro, that's lame. All right, let's watch the other one.
If you admit to opposing counsel that he's having a Perry Mason moment while cross-examining you...
This is your Perry Mason moment.
Well, you're probably screwed. And that is exactly what happened to Alex Jones. Alex Jones got so skewered on cross-examination that the writers of Law & Order said it was too unrealistic for the show. Now, to say that this defamation trial by some of the Sandy Hook families against Alex Jones is going poorly for Jones is quite the understatement. Now, to recall how we got here, Jones is already in hot water. This trial is only over damages, how much Jones is going to have to pay these families. Because he and his lawyers engaged in so many discovery abuses that the judge sanctioned him, gave him effectively terminating sanctions where he had to concede liability. Jones lost the case and the Sandy Hook plaintiffs won by default. That's how abusive they were during discovery. But that takes us to the viral video that you might have seen clips of where the plaintiff's attorney Mark,
and it is so fucking funny. It's one of the funniest things during the trial.
Bankston absolutely destroys Alex Jones on cross after just setting him up for a gigantic fall. So let's take a look.
One of the things you talked about yesterday is you complied with discovery, right? You said that on the witness stand?
That's one of the things I talked about.
I mean, Jones did not actually comply with discovery, but I guess now they're saying after all the sanctions, they have upheld all of their obligations.
Okay. One of the things that you were ordered to do in this lawsuit, you were ordered to turn over any text messages mentioning Sandy Hook, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so probably the very first request that the plaintiffs would have made is any documents that mention the phrase Sandy Hook or refer to the events of Sandy Hook that Jones possesses. This is Discovery 101. These are the kind of requests you're going to make.
And you didn't have any, right?
Not that we could find.
Now, that's a bit of a cop-out by Jones. He's saying, might have had them, but we couldn't find them. That doesn't get out of his obligations because you have to do a reasonable...
Right-wingers always say that they have all this fucking mountains of evidence of shit that's, like, happening, or, like, shit that, they advocate for, but they generally tend to not have it.
Search, and your lawyers have to make sure that you do a reasonable search to find responsive documents.
And you in fact told me in your testimony, sworn testimony before coming to this courtroom, you searched, right?
I did.
Okay.
All right, so Bankston has set this up. You've testified that you didn't have any Sandy Hook related texts, and that, of course, you did a search for them. It's all downhill from here for Jones.
Do you remember, were you here for Mr. Schroeder's testimony?
Yes.
Okay. You remember?
He fucking coughs every time he speaks, bro. This is, I forgot he did this.
When Owen said, the company has learned from its mistakes about Sandy Hook. You remember that?
I did hear him say that.
You agree with that?
Yeah, we've certainly learned from our mistakes, got a lot better.
Okay. Mr. Jones, I'd like to show you what's been marked as plaintiff's exhibit 130. You've got it upside down. That's text messages between you and Paul Watson, isn't it?
Yes.
And they mention Sandy Hook, don't they?
Yes.
Plaintiffs move 130 into evidence?
All right, so this is the kind of stuff you never see in movies. It's the meat and potatoes of litigation. It's kind of the boring stuff. You're laying foundation that this document is what it purports to be. This witness has verified it, and then you're moving it into evidence. But so far, seems pretty routine. We're about to find out why that is not the case, and it is a brilliant act of setting everyone up for a fall here.
Any objection?
The judge asks, any objections? No. Why would there be any objections? This is probably just one of the millions of documents that were turned over.
No objections.
Plaintiff's 130 is admitted.
No objection. So, the opposing counsel doesn't quite understand what this document is at this point, and so he waives any objection he might make to entering this particular document into evidence. Now Jones has been screwed.
Let's zoom in on the little article up in the corner, please. I'm going to walk over to this to you so we can kind of point it out. I know it's a little hard to read. You might be able to read it a little better on your screen. But this is a zoom of Mr. Watson has sent you a screenshot from Infowars.com, correct?
It appears to be.
Yeah, and it has an article here, right?
Yeah.
And it says, staged. Video shows hospital using dummies in ER for coronavirus footage.
I believe so.
Let's go to the first message from Mr. Watson. Read along with me, Mr. Jones. He says, this is a video.
Sorry, Steve, one second.
No problem. Take your time.
Man, Joe.
He's getting so fucking nervous. He's coughing so much. Bro, this, I fucking love it. I loved it. I forgot he did that. Oh, man.
Jones has a nasty cough. I guess he needs to take more of those supplements that he hawks on his channel.
He may not think it's a problem, but it's a real one.
Sure. Mr. Watson says, this is a video of a medical student training to intubate. Makes us look ridiculous, suggesting this means COVID is fake. Sandy Hook all over again. I read that correctly?
Yes.
Go to the next message. What'd you tell Mr. Watson?
I get it.
What has happened is this is something that has taken place after all of the Sandy Hook related communications. One of his employees says that we shouldn't publish this because it makes us look stupid and it's evocative of what happened during the Sandy Hook stuff. And Jones says, I get it. Everything Jones has said up until now is basically a lie. And it also shows that Jones and his attorneys never actually searched for responsive communications. So being caught in that particular lie and falsity is going to be much, much worse than if they had just turned over these documents in the first place. And that is why you comply with discovery. But let's see how the knife gets twisted.
Mr. Jones, it's true that this article is right now live on Infowars.com. I can pull it up, right?
I've never seen this text message. I guess you guys got Paul's.
How do you not see the text message, bro? You literally sent it, my guy.
My phone didn't save them, so that's fine.
Your phone didn't save the second.
I told you guys I gave it to the lawyers and said they drained the phone, they didn't find that stuff. I don't know how my phone's.
Yeah, and now he's trying to throw his lawyers under the bus. That must not have been on my phone. I searched my phones and I turned stuff over to lawyers. If you didn't have this, it's because of the lawyers. That's not going to go as planned.
You gave it to the lawyers. They were supposed to find it. So that's what testimony is?
No, I searched it as well. I don't know whose phone's taken from. I mean, I turned the phone over and said, take the stuff off.
Can I have you look in the very bottom below the very bottom left corner? Is that your phone number?
Yes. So you did get my text messages. And it said you didn't. Nice trick.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
Indeed.
The lawyer can't help himself because he knows what the next question is going to be. Alex Jones is...
I remember watching that. It was so funny. Oh, man.
Trying to run this really fine line where, yes, he held stuff back. He got sanctioned so badly that he lost the liability phase of the trial. He thinks it's safe to say, well, I couldn't have possibly held it back if you have all of these text messages. But now the final phase of the trap is just about to be sprung.
You didn't give this text message to me. You don't know where this came from. Do you know where I got this?
No.
12 days ago. Your attorneys messed up and sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years, and when informed, did not take any steps to identify it as privileged or protect it in any way. And as of 2 days ago, it fell free and clear into my possession. And that is how I know you lied to me when you said you didn't have text messages about Sandy Hook. Did you know that?
I told you the truth. This is your Perry Mason moment. I gave them my phone, and then...
Mr. Jones, you need to answer the question.
No,
Did you know this happened?
So normally there's some professional courtesy amongst lawyers where you're not going to just absolutely destroy them and throw them under the bus. Here, the lawyer is throwing Jones and his attorneys under the bus. I've never heard of something this inflammatory coming out against another opposing attorney during the course of a trial. The lawyer screwed up and sent an entire copy of Jones's phone to opposing counsel and then didn't claw it back. There are a million things that you can do to claw that back. The lawyer didn't do that.
I don't even know how that happens in the first place. Like, it's so funny that it happened though.
As a result, Alex Jones is on the stand just getting destroyed, being shown that everything he's talked about is a lie, that they tried to continue to hide information from the plaintiffs. And it's only because of this inadvertent disclosure that they finally got the documents that they had been entitled to this entire time. The jury is hearing all of this, and they're finding out how much of a liar and fabulist Alex Jones is, if they didn't know already, but also that there are shenanigans as well. And during the course of trial, not only the witness's credibility, but the lawyer's credibility is everything. And once you lose that credibility, you're probably screwed because the jury will find ways to award people that they believe and punish people who they don't believe. Oh, and by the way, it's of course impossible to prep a witness like Alex Jones to be an effective advocate on the stand. But man, you gotta know just the basics of self-preservation. Don't tell the cross-examining attorney that this is his Perry Mason moment. It kind of signals to the jury that you're getting screwed, and you deserve to be screwed.
No, I didn't know this happened, but I mean, I told you, I gave him the phone over. Just
And you said in your deposition, you searched your phone. You said you pulled down the text, did the search function for Sandy Hook.
And I had several different phones with this number, but I did, yeah. Well, of course, I mean, that's why you got it.
There's all kinds of things that can go wrong in discovery, but the absolute easiest thing that you can do as a client or as a lawyer is to do a word search. And when the entire trial revolves around the phrase Sandy Hook, the absolute bare minimum, the necessary thing that you have to do is do a word search for Sandy Hook. And it's very clear that if they had done this absolute minimum fundamental thing, this text would have been found and it would have been turned over to the other side, but they clearly didn't do that.
No, Mr. Jones, that's not what happened.
My lawyer sent it to you, but I'm hiding it. Okay.
Mr. Jones?
Mr. Jones, that?
Just answer questions. There's no question. Mr. Bankston also only asks questions.
Sure.
And a little bit of foreshadowing here. This is really underselling what happened between the two lawyers. That the opposing counsel, the defense attorney Raynal, sent the full copy of Jones's phone is just the tip of the iceberg. He actually sent way more than that to opposing counsel. Effectively, probably the entire case file from the defense to the plaintiffs. Just absolute malpractice. And we're gonna get to that because that is, if you can believe it, even juicier than this cross-examination is indicating.
Mr. Jones, in discovery, you were asked, do you have Sandy Hook text messages on your phone? And you said no, correct?
I mean, if I was mistaken, but you got the messages right there.
You know it personally. I just want to make sure you know before we go any further. You know what it is.
Yes, I do. I mean, I'm not a tech guy. I told you, I gave in my testimony the phone to the lawyers before, whatever, and so you got my phone, but we didn't give it to you.
And please remember, if you need to assert the Fifth Amendment, you can. I need to know that you can do that.
Ouch.
But you testified under oath previously that you personally searched your phone for the phrase Sandy Hook, and there were no messages. You said that under oath.
Yes.
And you lied when you said it.
No, I did not lie.
And here, the plaintiff's attorney is kind of gilding the lily a little bit. He has now absolutely established that Jones said he did a search for the word Sandy Hook, and that he previously testified that he did not have any of those communications, which we now know is absolutely not the case. Jones tried.
I mean, like, did anyone really expect anything else, though? Like, I mean, of course he was hiding shit.
Tries to backpedal by saying, look, I was mistaken, I had many phones, but I thought that was true at the time. But that seems extraordinarily unlikely under the cross-examination that we just saw. Because again, you're trying to impugn the witness's character and show that the witness is a liar. So as Mr. Bankston has done here, you teed up with a prior inconsistent statement and then show them either the evidence or the prior statement that is contradictory to what they previously testified to. So when I saw this clip, I was flabbergasted. How in the world did this happen? How did these documents get turned over after years of being hidden by Alex Jones and his attorneys? Well, luckily, the court held a full hearing on this matter to discuss. Jones's counsel finally moved for a mistrial the day after this testimony came out. Now, this hearing did not go well. So let's dive into this hearing because from a seasoned litigator, I think this is actually even more interesting than the original cross-examination. Jones's attorney is asking for a mistrial. Effectively, he's saying that the malfeasance from the other side is so terrible that we need to end this trial and do it over again. So how in the world did this happen? Well, let's hear it straight from Andino Raynal, the defense attorney's mouth.
A couple weeks before trial, a file transfer link was sent to the plaintiff's attorneys, specifically Mr. Bankston. That link linked up a lot of files that shouldn't have been connected to it.
Okay, so he's saying that a link was sent, probably a Dropbox link containing some documents that needed to be turned over to the plaintiffs. Apparently that link contained much more than was intended.
He said, I take it this was sent in error. And I responded to him and I said, it has been sent in error. please disregard the link. I will work on preparing a new one.
Okay, so we hear from the defense attorney that the plaintiff's attorney did notify him that the production had been made and it was probably in error. That's super bad news for the defense attorney because if you've been notified and you don't do anything to claw it back, well, then you're probably screwed, which, spoiler, is what happens here.
I mean, we have a situation here which is akin to me mistakenly giving him the key to a room, and you know, he opens the door to the room, and instead of finding what he expected to find, he sees other doors. And he recognized that and told me, I don't think you meant to give me this key. And I said, please throw it away. Apparently, at some point thereafter, he said, you know what, I kind of really like to see what's behind those doors.
This is an interesting argument, and he's doing probably a good job of trying to paint the plaintiff's actions in the worst possible light, because that's what you're going to need to convince the judge to claw back all of these documents. He's saying that the plaintiff's attorney abused the inadvertent production, went rummaging around in all of these documents and found what was good for his case, and I guess didn't notify or destroy the documents once they were in his possession.
And that's why we're here seeking protection under the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure as well as the court's confidentiality order.
So here's the relief that the defense attorney is looking for. He's asking for a protective order to stop disseminating the documents, to claw them back, to assert privilege, and to destroy those documents that have been inadvertently turned over to the plaintiffs.
You're right. I'm just going to start unsending these one by one.
You wrote unsend. You keep sending the word unsend, 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 unsend. Please do not read. I'm begging you.
Yeah, I hate to be put into this position by the conduct of plaintiff's counsel.
And of course, he is trying to blame plaintiff's attorney for this mess, not he himself, the one that inadvertently produced all this stuff.
And that's why, in addition to the request that they delete the information from their servers and delete the link, we're also requesting at this point, unfortunately, a mistrial.
And now we hear from the plaintiff's attorney and hear his side of it.
First, let me just go through the facts that they were said. This link of materials was sent to me. It was sent to Mr. Ogden. It was sent by Mr. Reynolds' legal assistant.
Ah, okay. So this link was sent not by defense attorney Andino Reynal, but actually by his legal assistant. I think that legal assistant has probably been fired. An easy mistake to make, but it's a mistake that you absolutely cannot make.
As I informed Mr. Reynal, we started downloading those materials. I was busy on trial prep. I told my paralegal, get these on our server, download everything there. All right. A little bit after he gets this stuff downloading, it's like, wait a second, this file that we now have on our server has clogged up our entire server. It's like 300 gigs. What's going on?
Okay, so the plaintiff's lawyer.
Bro, how do you have 300 gigs of that shit? Oh man, that's once you have like 300 gigs of like incriminating evidence, that's just game over, right? Like, yeah, it's no wonder why he fucking lost the trial.
Lawyer does what probably anyone would do. You get a link and you start downloading it. And then only once you've started downloading it do you realize that it's a huge production, 300 gigabytes. And you probably don't know what's in that link until you've downloaded everything. But it's so big that it's actually clogging his servers, which is hilarious. Well,
it is kind of funny.
Jones's attorneys, though.
Mr. Reynal actually blocked quotes 130, 193 through 2. So I know he knows how to read it. What he still hasn't done, at the moment he is up here requesting a mistrial, is he hasn't followed the rule. Even today, late has not followed the rule. The rule requires that production is any privilege is waived.
Okay, this is easy to miss, but this is the most important part. The plaintiff's attorney is referring to briefing. He's saying that the defense's brief is citing a part of the Texas Rule of Civil Procedure about inadvertent disclosure. And he's saying, I know that opposing counsel, the defense attorney, is able to read because he is citing to the operative part of the Texas Rule of Civil Procedure, but it actually is very, very bad for him. And he talks about the actual standard. What happens when you make an inadvertent disclosure? Lawyers write these rules, so obviously they're going to make it so that if you inadvertently disclose something, there's a way to get it back.
Any privilege is waived if within 10 days, or if you order a shorter time, but within 10 days, the producing party of when they actually discover, so 10 days from the moment I told them, that they identify specifically the material or information produced and state the privilege asserted. I have not heard any privilege. I've never heard a privilege asserted over any document.
So the plaintiff's lawyer points out that he notified opposing counsel of the disclosure. Opposing counsel didn't do anything. He didn't supplement his production. He never asserted privilege. That means all of these documents, all 300 gigabytes of documents, are fair game. And the plaintiff's lawyer is probably right.
But even more important than that is all of the stuff in there. He cannot now come into court and claim 2.3 gigabytes of phone material, blanket designation of confidentiality. The protective order prohibits that. You must identify specifically the documents that are. And things like Mr. Jones and his intimate messages with Roger Stone are not confidential.
And then the plaintiff's lawyer explains that the defense not only failed to uphold their obligations under 193.3, but they didn't comply with the court's protective order, that the court can put in additional rules that...
So much legal mumbo jumbo, like, I don't get any of it. Like, it's just going all over my head, but I'm still glad I get to rewatch some of these fucking clips again, because they're fucking awesome.
Govern the disclosure of information. They didn't follow that. They didn't supplement their production. So even the email, it says, please disregard that link. I'll send you another link. He didn't even follow through with that. And oh, by the way, the vast majority of these documents are not privileged and should have been disclosed years and years ago.
So I don't think that you have complied with the protective order. I will let you do so now. If there are documents and you would like to mark them as confidential, and we can go through the process and I can review them and make a decision, but I'm not going to seal the entire quantity of information without knowing what's in it when the rules weren't followed properly.
It's a tremendous amount of information, Your Honor.
I know. The problem is it probably should have been disclosed a year ago or longer, and then there would have been plenty of time to look through all of it.
And in the end, the judge doesn't seal these documents. She allows the defense to try to assert privilege. She recognizes that the vast majority of these documents are not privileged and should have been turned over. And then, of course, the defense's prior discovery abuses come back to bite them again, because how in the world are they going to actually assert privilege or review 300 gigabytes worth of files in a couple of days while at trial? But the judge doesn't have any sympathy. She says that this stuff should have been turned over, and the reason that they're in this position is because of their own malfeasance. And the lesson here that clients learn time and time again is don't hold back discovery, don't engage in discovery abuses, or stuff like this is going to happen. Oh, and one more thing. At the end of the trial, the plaintiff's lawyer lets the judge and opposing counsel know that law enforcement is requesting these documents. And not only law enforcement, but in particular, the January 6th committee is very interested in these documents, and
I mean, like, of course the January 6th committee would be very fucking interested in what the hell was actually in Alex Jones's text messages and shit. Like, yeah, there's probably like a very big amount of incriminating evidence for him. I really have to keep up with the January 6th committee. I haven't really been doing so.
Is going to turn them over to that committee. So it looks like that is just the beginning of Alex Jones's legal worries. And you'll be able to read all about Alex Jones's future civil and criminal legal issues in today's sponsor, Morning Brew, because that's my favorite way to catch up with pop culture and...
Well, I think we'll call it there for now then. It was a fun time.
It's like
yeah, it was definitely fun catching back up with all that stuff again. We can I think next time we'll have a little bit of fun, because I hear that there's a series on I think it's Cut, where it's like a speed dating game thing where where they're able to hit a button and shit. I hear it's supposed to get like really wild, so yeah, we have to watch that. So we'll have a little bit of fun, and then if anything like major happens, we'll also talk about that. So yeah, until next time. Tomorrow I'm probably gonna be playing more Xenoblade 3 because that game is fucking amazing. It's hard to put down unless I'm able to get other people to join me in Minecraft. So until then.